In the heart of a desolate wasteland rises the demon capital, a fortress shaped like a sinister grin. Its halls serve as a grim monument to anyone who dared challenge its master. And on a lonely throne, a mighty being reflects on the century that's gone by since his last decent fight. This is Belmont, the Demon King, who's gotten bored of crushing lame heroes for 1,000 years. He thinks back to the fire wielder from 100 years ago, who was, ironically, snuffed out by a freezing flame. 10 years after that, a water hero didn't stand a chance, getting overwhelmed by a tide of boiling rage. The wind hero's attempt 70 years back was over in a flash, literally blown away by a murky hurricane. Even the earth hero from 50 years ago was just swallowed whole by the very ground he controlled. Ever since then, his throne room has been dead silent, with no new challengers brave enough to show up. But the long wait is finally over, as a determined new hero arrives to take him on. The hero bursts onto the scene, effortlessly taking out one of the Demon King's top commanders. Belmont is completely unfazed, taunting her for daring to challenge a master of all elemental magic. But she just scoffs at his empty threats, ready to see just how long his cockiness will last in a real fight. With the trash talk over, the hero launches herself into the air, unleashing the first strike of their destined battle. Their epic showdown rages on for 7 days and 7 nights, a true clash of titans. In the end, though, the hero collapses to the floor, looking totally overwhelmed and beaten. But just as Belmont is about to declare victory, he's suddenly caught in a mysterious force that starts draining his power. He struggles against this bizarre, unknown elemental magic, totally clueless about what it is. Re-energized, the hero reveals her ace in the hole, a one-of-a-kind technique known as the cultivation of yin and yang. And just like that, the Demon King, who ruled undefeated for a century, was finally taken down by the legendary hero, Arya. Fast forward 50 years, and the once feared demon capital is now a hot tourist spot. A tour guide is proudly showing off the fortress, which has been rebranded as the Demon's Capital Museum. The new generation is buzzing with excitement, totally hyped to see the legendary figures from the past. An Imperial Knight playfully reminds her young audience that history is for looking, not for touching. Once inside, the kids are totally starstruck, finally seeing the setting of their favorite epic story in real life. And right before them stands the main attraction, the petrified body of the once mighty Demon King. The tour guide reveals this isn't just some statue. The actual Demon King, sealed in stone for all time. This permanent exhibit, she explains, is all thanks to the one and only hero, Arya. Arya's own statue totally inspires the kids. Her legend has become the cool new goal for all the hero wannabes. As the tour continues, a lone maid is quietly tidying up the silent halls of history. Suddenly, the tour guide remembers another fun fact for her group. To prove her point, she suddenly grabs the horn of the unsuspecting maid. The guide explains that thanks to the hero's mercy, the demon race was allowed to live alongside humans. As the poor maid panics, the knight uses her as a living display to point out their features. With a casual shove, the guide sends the demon maid tumbling to the floor. She just keeps on with her lecture, explaining that their magic was sealed away, making them totally harmless. Completely ignoring the humiliated maid, she leads the tour group on, but a look of pure hatred follows her every step. The sound of children's laughter rings out as the maid quietly picks herself up. But don't be fooled, she isn't broken, she's just biding her time until tonight. Little does she know, a nearby knight seems to feel that something is amiss. As night descends, the Demon Capital's museum is set to become the backdrop for a clandestine uprising. A lone demon maid stands waiting in the moonlit hall, her chance for vengeance finally within reach. She unveils her secret weapon, a powerful elixir known as the saliva of a magical dragon. 50 long years of humiliation drove her to gather this incredible power-boosting potion. Gazing at her petrified master, she vows that today is the day he will be brought back. With just one shot at this, she gets ready to drink the forbidden concoction. She downs the entire vial, welcoming the exhilarating surge of power she hasn't felt in ages. A radiant aura explodes from her body, magic coursing through her veins for the first time in decades. Ancient demonic incantations spill from her lips as her sealed powers are completely unleashed. She unleashes a furious torrent of lightning, shattering the hall's silence in a spectacular show of force. She channels every ounce of her newly regained power into one single, devastating blast. A bolt of lightning smashes right into the Demon King's petrified form, and the spell's recoil hurls her clear across the massive throne room. The impact is so strong it cracks the solid marble floor beneath her. Drained but full of hope, she forces herself to look up, desperate to see if her gamble paid off. A single, glowing crack appears on the stone, a sure sign of success. The statue then explodes into 1,000 pieces, freeing the one who was trapped inside. Tears of pure joy stream down her face as she celebrates her master's long-awaited comeback. As the dust begins to settle, a new figure starts to take shape within the blinding light. Her celebration comes to a screeching halt when she sees not a powerful king, but a little kid standing in his place. The reborn Demon King slowly wakes up, feeling like he just woke up from a really, really long nap. His loyal maid can only stare in disbelief, barely managing to ask if it's actually him. He confirms that it's him with all the authority of a king, but he has absolutely no memory of the woman standing in front of him. She's immediately convinced That powerful aura and those piercing eyes could belong to no one else. Overcome with joy, she practically tackles him in a tear-filled hug and introduces herself as Lehi. The Demon King is completely baffled by this sudden, emotional reunion. But then, a sudden flashback shows him a very different, much younger Lehi from his own memories. He shoves her back, his confusion rapidly shifting to deep suspicion. Belmont demands to know who this imposter really is, pointing out that a few major things just don't add up. She frantically explains that 50 years without magic has changed the demon race in more ways than one. For 50 years, she had to disguise herself and take on all sorts of odd jobs, all to get ready for this very moment. Every single hardship was worth it just to see the day her master would finally be brought back to life. It finally clicks for Belmont. Her appearance changed because all of her magic had been sealed away. His mind flashes back to the hero, Arya, and the strange elemental magic she used to imprison him in the first place. Lehi proudly declares that their days of being pushed around are over now that he's back to lead them. But the Demon King crushes her hopes with a single devastating word: I refuse. He casually brushes off her plea, far more interested in finding some new clothes. Lehi is absolutely floored, wondering what could possibly be more important than restoring their entire race. After sitting on the throne for 1,000 years, Belmont confesses he's totally over the whole Demon King gig and that peace actually sounds awesome. It dawns on Lehi that they were so blown away by his reputation, they completely forgot that, by their standards, the guy is basically just a teenager. Scrambling for a solution, Lehi pleads with her master to spill the details on the hero's sealing magic. Belmont digs deep into his memory, struggling to recall the name of that bizarre technique. Lehi leans in closer, totally captivated and hanging on his every word. He finally blurts out that it was some obscure art called the Cultivation of Yin and Yang, which involved a very personal exchange of life force. The maid's brain just blue screens, her face exploding into a brilliant shade of crimson. After rebooting, she works up the nerve to timidly ask what the experience was actually like. He just describes it as this weird, painful pressure that took over his whole body, something he couldn't even put into words. It hits Lehi that even the supposedly all-powerful Demon King was completely baffled by such a freaky technique. But their awkward chat is cut short by an unwanted guest hiding in the shadows. Lehi's eyes go wide with terror when she recognizes the Imperial Knight from earlier. The knight makes her grand entrance, mocking the maid for having the audacity to bring back the legendary Demon King. In a total panic, Lehi shoves her master behind her, screaming for him to get out of there. But the knight is way too quick, unleashing a massive gust of wind that sends them both tumbling. Lehi takes the full brunt of the attack, using her own body as a shield for Belmont. For the first time in centuries, the Demon King actually looks worried about someone else. Even though she's hurt, the loyal maid insists he run while she holds the knight off. The knight just scoffs at their little moment, bragging that her wind magic is all she needs to take them down. Belmont just smirks, completely unimpressed by her little light show and ready to demonstrate what real power feels like. He raises his hand, about to cast a spell that'll shut her up for good. And then, it hits him. After 50 years of being a garden gnome, he's totally forgotten how to use his magic. Seeing her chance, the knight launches a devastating blade of wind, dead set on finishing them both off. The attack tears through the throne room, blasting Lehi backward. She screams out her master's name, absolutely terrified for him. Belmont staggers back to his feet, grumbling about how pathetic his new human body is. The knight's suspicions are confirmed. The legendary Demon King is now totally powerless. With a smug grin plastered on her face, she declares that she's definitely getting a huge promotion for this. Lehi, meanwhile, is tearfully apologizing, blaming herself for not hiding the dragon's saliva better. But Belmont's mind is stuck on something else entirely, asking if demons have always been treated like dirt. Lehi admits that even though a peace treaty was signed, it was basically just a piece of paper with empty promises. The reality is, a lot of humans still hate their kind and refuse to even acknowledge their existence. Belmont just smirks, realizing this so-called peace was a joke from the start. He shoots a look over at Arya's statue, muttering that even the legendary hero couldn't pull off a real utopia. Lehi jumps to protect him, throwing up a barrier of human magic she'd learned on the sly. The knight just laughs at the pathetic little spell, promising to haul them both off to the authorities. Belmont knows she's just wasting her energy and decides his magical retirement is officially over. He frantically tries to call upon his old elemental powers, but gets absolutely nothing. Then, all of a sudden, a strange new energy starts crackling to life inside his powerless body. His eyes go wide as he recognizes the mysterious magic. It's the exact same kind Arya used to seal him away. With a new strategy clicking into place, he calls for his ever-faithful maid, Belmont, as he grabs Lehi, intending to use her as a channel for this newfound power. To Lehi's absolute shock, Belmont kicks off the power transfer with a sudden, deeply intimate gesture. A massive wave of life force begins surging between them, leaving the loyal maid utterly speechless at her master's desperate maneuver. Radiant energy flows from Lehi, reawakening the dormant power sealed deep within the Demon King. A dazzling magic circle explodes to life beneath their feet, supercharging the ancient ritual, and with the transfer complete, A tearful Lehi confirms his plan was a success. Belmont feels the familiar magic he wielded for 50 long years roaring back to life inside him. He finally identifies the power, the legendary cultivation of yin and yang, while the knight scoffs from above, ready to crush their last-ditch effort. However, her blade of wind is effortlessly shattered by an immense blast of demonic energy. Flashing a menacing glare, Belmont prepares to turn the knight into a pile of smoldering ash. He unleashes a devastating flood of fiery energy that completely engulfs the hall, from which the knight emerges, battered and stunned by this unfamiliar power. Belmont reveals that this is the hero's own magic, telling her she's incredibly lucky she isn't already dead. She completely loses her cool, screaming about how a demon could possibly wield Arya's sacred technique, but the Demon King calmly corrects her. He states that demons are not what she's been led to believe, a simple declaration that leaves the knight utterly speechless and confused. Overwhelmed by the incredible power and the shocking revelation, the once proud knight collapses in total defeat. With the fight now over, Belmont turns his attention to his loyal and extremely flustered maid. He declares his new mission is to free the entire demon race from their magical seals, and his first command is to find a place with plenty of women. Lehi's mind immediately jumps to the worst possible conclusion, leaving her a blushing, stammering mess. He quickly clarifies that his grand plan is to use the hero's own technique to restore the demon race to its former glory. Their journey leads them to Ra's City, ironically named after the very hero who defeated him. This bustling human metropolis, once his own capital, is now a place where anything can be had for the right price. Lehi guides him directly to a district known for catering to every kind of earthly desire. The moment they step inside, Belmont is immediately mobbed by a swarm of enthusiastic hostesses. They offer him a special essence tea, but the young Demon King is completely unfazed as a snake woman tries her best to charm him with suggestive whispers. Even an adorable slime girl's desperate plea for attention can't seem to crack his stone-cold composure. Lehi desperately tries to convince herself this is all for a noble cause, just as a confident fox girl hostess asks the Demon King to make his choice. To his loyal maid's complete astonishment, Belmont coolly turns down the offer, and Lehi breathes a huge sigh of relief, proud of her master's seemingly virtuous character. But her hopes are instantly crushed when he boldly declares that he wants every single one of them. His outrageous request sends the hostesses into an absolute frenzy of excitement, and as he's led away, a fuming Lehi mutters about how predictable men are. Belmont's true motive, however, is finally revealed. It's all part of a strategic plan to counter elemental magic. Inside their private room, one of the women playfully reaches up to remove his hood, and his demonic horns are suddenly revealed, stunning the entire room into a shocked silence. The hostesses freeze right where they stand, their warm, welcoming smiles vanishing in an instant. Belmont is completely oblivious, wondering why the warm welcome has suddenly gone arctic. All he can manage is a dumbfounded, huh? As the women gawk at his demonic traits, their sweet smiles instantly vanishing. In their place are looks of pure, raw hatred. An abrupt explosion blasts Belmont and Lehi straight out onto the street as one of the fox girls sneers. She's disgusted to find out their high-rolling customer was nothing more than some worthless demon. Their sweet act morphs into pure rage as they violently boot the two from their place. Lehi chews out her master, who just casually explains that he's used to servants taking his clothes off for him. Just then, a mysterious demon woman shows up, laughing at the young king's cluelessness before dropping a harsh reality check. Around here, demons are the lowest of the low, forced to scrape by on the streets. The stranger coldly declares that their suffering is all thanks to the Demon King who failed. Lehi jumps to his defense, but the woman just scoffs at her 50 years of wasted loyalty. She then directs her contempt toward Belmont, daring the quiet boy to throw down. But his intense stare freezes her on the spot, an aura that's both familiar and absolutely terrifying, paralyzing her. Belmont calmly asks which demons actually get to live a normal life in this city. The woman is horrified, feeling an overwhelming compulsion to obey his every word. She stutters that the only ones who are safe are students at the Hero Academy, and their entrance exam is coming up soon. Belmont instantly declares they're going, shocking both women with his audacious plan. The demon woman immediately protests. She insists there's no way a powerless demon could ever pass the hero's exam, but Belmont just tells her not to sweat the mistakes of the past. He vows to fix the screw-ups of his former self personally. 2 days later, an academy official shuts them down flat. He says they don't meet the qualifications. Their grand scheme hits a brick wall, leaving them completely stunned as the academy buzzes with other applicants. It's a sharp contrast to their own crushing disappointment. Apparently, demons need a sponsorship from a noble just to apply. It's a rule basically designed to keep their kind out. While Lehi tries to figure out a new angle, Belmont spirals into a bizarre fit of self-loathing. The once mighty king is reduced to calling himself useless garbage and a total embarrassment to his clan. But Lehi knows exactly what this is, identifying it as the legendary state of D, a mental breakdown unique to demon kings. It's a state of extreme self-deprecation triggered whenever they break a promise to themselves. She remembers a past king who went into this state just for taking 1 second longer than he promised to beat a hero. Heck, she even remembers one who had a meltdown over a simple toothache. Lehi knows that while he's in this trance, her master operates purely on his most basic instincts. But when she tries to help, she's met with a powerful, reflexive shove from the Demon King. The recoil from the push sends Belmont himself flying backwards across the pavement. Lehi can only watch in horror as her master gets launched by his own out-of-control power. She scrambles to his side, but their little scene has already attracted some unwanted attention. The disturbance came from a headstrong young noblewoman getting an earful from her attendant. This is Alice Roseth, and she clearly has zero interest in listening to her handler. Her attendant insists she's far too important to be taking the exam alongside a bunch of commoners. Meanwhile, that unexpected jolt seems to have knocked Belmont right out of his depressive spiral. Alice's attendant, Roy Suma, is demanding that the eldest young miss head home this instant, but Alice just explodes in a fiery rage. She warned him to never speak that name again, then unleashed a breathtaking spell, the Reign of the Phoenix, but in a shocking twist, her mighty attack just fizzled out, harmlessly swirling around the stone-faced attendant. Roy just calmly waved it off, admitting her elemental magic was pretty good for a kid, but ultimately useless against him. He bragged that she was way out of her league, calling himself the General of Elegant Demon Guidance. Apparently, his technique let him feel out and dodge any magical attack perfectly. With almost lazy grace, he batted away every single one of her elemental blasts. But of course, one of those deflected shots went flying wild, heading straight for the totally oblivious Demon King and his maid. Lehi's heart sank as she realized their little squabble had caught the Demon King's attention. Her eyes went wide with sheer panic as a rogue fireball rocketed right at them. Meanwhile, the attendant smugly called the match over, casually brushing off his lady's pointless struggle. He even threatened to drag her home for another one of his elegant lessons in obedience. But just then, Belmont stepped in and took the full force of the deflected blast, not even flinching. The rogue magic exploded with enough power to rip the street to shreds, and from the smoking crater, Belmont walked out without a scratch, wondering aloud where that blast even came from. Lehi scrambled to his side, completely stunned that he'd just taken a hit for her. All the young noble, Alice, could do was gawk in disbelief. She was floored by this mysterious boy. Belmont shot the two of them a freezing glare, warning them to keep innocent people out of their little spats. Alice, completely clueless, started demanding an apology, not realizing Belmont's attention had already shifted to her attendant. Lehi instantly saw that her master's usual gloom had flipped a switch into a full-blown, violent rage. The young noble screamed at the mysterious boy, demanding that he stop. Belmont glared right back, irritated by another interruption. But then, as he looked at the girl, his anger suddenly wavered. A hint of confusion crossed his face. For a second, he saw a ghostly image of the hero, Arya. The resemblance was just uncanny. Alice was absolutely infuriated by his intense gaze and snapped, "What are you staring at?" She charged forward, dead set on prying her attendant from his grip. But the instant her hand made contact with his shoulder, a bizarre energy crackled between them. A jolt of strange magic shot through her, leaving the noble girl completely stunned and flustered. Alice was totally overwhelmed, flooded by a powerful and completely foreign sensation. It hit Belmont like a lightning bolt. The cultivation of yin and yang had just been triggered. He felt the ancient magic flare to life in his hand, spiraling completely out of his control. A wild surge of vital essence was about to overwhelm them both. Their simple touch had become a channel for a massive, unstable transfer of power. But just in time, Lehi threw herself between them, bravely taking the brunt of the chaotic energy herself. As always, the loyal maid's only thought was for her master's safety. Belmont quickly reassured her, explaining that they'd accidentally triggered the hero's magic. That's when Lehi urgently revealed the girl's true identity. She was a direct descendant of the hero, Arya. Shaking off the shock, Alice Roseth demanded to know just who these mysterious people were. Belmont took a step forward, closing the gap between him and the hero's descendant. He looked up at the young noble, his face a complete mystery as he took her measure. Now face to face, Alice couldn't help but notice a strange sense of familiarity between them, despite how different they were. Then, the Demon King made a really weird gesture. He's trying to match her face to memories that are 50 years old, but a quick scan of his thoughts tells him she's not the hero he once knew. Visibly flustered, the noblewoman grabs him and demands to know why he's acting so weird. Thinking on her feet, Lehi whips up a crazy excuse, claiming demons just have a special way of recognizing folks. Alice, surprisingly, lets it go, but reminds them that they're still banned from taking the academy exam. Feeling defeated, Belmont and Lehi try to make a quick and awkward exit, but Alice stops them dead in their tracks, demanding to know how he managed to use a forbidden spell. It dawns on Alice that the boy's move wasn't just a lucky shot. He had expertly pinpointed a weakness in her attendant's supposedly flawless defense. Just as Belmont gets ready to spill the beans, Lehi starts to freak out, begging him not to reveal what they really are. But he ignores her, cryptically explaining that Alice herself has a one-of-a-kind, non-elemental power. Lehi's eyes go wide with terror, absolutely convinced her master is about to blow his cover as the Demon King. But instead, he declares that she's the descendant of a charming demon. It's a lie so ridiculous, it's actually kind of genius. Lehi lets out a huge sigh of relief, impressed by her master's ability to think on his feet. The noble girl, on the other hand, is totally confused, asking what in the world a charming demon is even supposed to be. Alice then starts listing off some, let's just say, spicy details about that particular type of demon, which forces a red-faced Belmont to cut her off. Switching topics, she concedes that even though they're a couple of weirdos, the two of them really did help her out. She announces that her family raised her to always repay a kindness, hinting that a reward is in order for their help. Their destination? The Holy Belmont Great Hero Academy, which, ironically, is named after the very Demon King they're supposed to be fighting. An examiner gets ready to start the test, assuming everyone who's coming has already arrived, but Belmont and Lehi burst in at the last second, dead set on taking the exam. The official just scoffs at them, reminding the two demons that they can't get in without a letter of recommendation from a noble. In response, Belmont coolly holds out a piece of paper and asks if this will do the trick. The man's smug look completely disappears when he recognizes the signature from the legendary Roseth family. Then, as if on cue, Alice herself shows up, announcing that she also plans to take the exam. The examiner is completely starstruck as he realizes he's standing in the presence of the hero's direct descendant. His whole attitude changes in an instant, and the flustered official practically begs them to come inside. And just like that, the Demon King, his maid, and the hero's heir are all standing together, ready to take on the academy. The crowd instantly starts whispering, totally shocked to see the noble Alice hanging around with a couple of demons. Lehi can feel the hostility in the air and knows their problems are just getting started. Their entrance is cut short by a confident-looking cat girl from the Beast clan. Her name is N, and she looks absolutely thrilled to see her rival, Alice, is also here for the exam. Alice, however, is clearly not happy about it, muttering that the most annoying person imaginable has just shown up. N playfully calls them childhood friends, but Alice shoots that down, insisting it's more of a cursed connection. The cat girl's focus then shifts over to Belmont and Lehi, and she mockingly asks if they're Alice's new servants. Alice immediately shuts her down, warning her to keep her hands off the charming demon. But that warning only seems to pique N's curiosity even more. So instead of backing off, N instantly grabs Belmont, totally fascinated by the idea of a male charming demon. Lehi is completely baffled, wondering why the hero's magic didn't go off the moment the cat girl touched her master. Meanwhile, N gets uncomfortably close, boldly proclaiming she wants to make the Demon King her new pet, which is when a fuming Alice shoves them apart, yelling at them to get a room already. The cat girl just laughs it off, teasing Alice for getting so worked up over a simple joke. But before anyone can even blink, a new challenger appears, an elf girl who gets right up in Belmont's personal space for a good sniff. The cat girl fumes in the background, annoyed that someone else beat her to the punch, while Alice's jaw hits the floor as she recognizes the newcomer. And she does not look thrilled about it. The elf, Rostana, completely ignores the drama, tenderly cupping the Demon King's face in her hands. She leans in, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, and asks if he's really one of those charming demons. Belmont plays along coyly, explaining that the male variety is a little bit special, causing a flustered Alice to try and break up the party. She shouts at the elf to back off, but Rostana ignores her, calling Belmont practice material and taunting Alice about her family's influence. The cat girl smirks, reminding Alice about some mysterious great hero agreement from the previous year. Alice furiously fires back that her plans are her own and have absolutely nothing to do with her family. The three hero descendants are locked in a tense face-off, their rivalry practically crackling in the air, as Belmont asks Lehi for some intel. She reveals they're the heirs of the three great heroes who fought him, which puzzles the Demon King, since he only remembers one hero who actually mattered, the legendary Arya. Lehi explains that Arya's team had 4 members, but her incredible fame created a bitter and long-lasting grudge. Suddenly, a brilliant pillar of light erupts from the academy, signaling the start of the exam, and the three rivals immediately pause their bickering. Their attention is now completely fixed on the challenge ahead as a powerful figure teleports onto the scene. Surrounded by crackling energy in a complex magic circle, this is Edward the Examiner, and he's here to welcome the new hopefuls. The crowd buzzes with excitement, instantly recognizing his high-level spatial magic, which makes Lehi grow anxious. He realizes their sealed powers are no match for this kind of magic, but Belmont calmly reassures her. He reveals their 2 cultivation sessions had an unexpected side effect, declaring that a portion of his elemental magic has already reawakened. A glowing sigil forms on his hand, crackling with raw, untamed energy, and the Demon King is ready to test the limits of his partially restored abilities. Lehi shields her eyes, completely stunned by the blinding radiance of his power. With tears of joy, she realizes her lord's true demonic power has finally returned. But his grand display of power is just a pathetic little spark, much to Lee's dismay, and he admits his control is minimal. He can barely sustain the magic outside his body, and the unstable energy quickly fizzles out. This proves just how weak his current state truly is, and Lehi despairs, knowing this pathetic power level won't be enough to pass the exam. The Demon King looks on, completely oblivious to his maid's sudden surge of determination. Without warning, she grabs his arm, pulling him close with a dead serious expression, and then pulls him into a tight embrace. This leaves the young Demon King utterly bewildered, and he demands to know what in the world she's doing. Completely flustered by the sudden closeness, she pulls out another vial, which he recognizes as the same elixir she used for his revival. Lehi explains this potent but temporary booster is his only shot at passing the exam, but Belmont just casually tosses the precious elixir aside, leaving her totally speechless. He straight up turns down the power-up, and his maid is just completely bewildered. As he strolls off, the Demon King starts to explain this sudden change of heart, flashing a smug little grin. He announces that it just wouldn't be right to pass the exam by cheating. Lehi's jaw practically hits the floor. She's absolutely floored by his newfound sense of honor. She furiously reminds him that the entire fate of their people is riding on this one test. Belmont pauses for a moment, thinking over her words before turning to face her with a dead serious expression. His loyal maid looks up, caught completely off guard by the sudden fire in his eyes. He declares that even without his former strength, the Demon Clan is second to no one. Placing a reassuring hand on her, he promises he'll pass this exam his own way. Lehi is totally won over, admitting she was wrong to ever doubt her master's determination. She carefully tucks the elixir away, reaffirming her faith in the one and only true Demon King. But just then, a mysterious hand suddenly snatches the vial right out of its hiding spot. Lehi is stunned, wondering why her lord would go back on his noble speech. Belmont just shrugs his shoulders, just as confused by this sudden twist. A magical portal tears open right in the wall and reveals the real thief. The loyal maid can only let out a scream as the forbidden elixir is snatched right from under her nose. Her shriek gets the Demon King's attention, and he spins around to face the intruder. The examiner, a guy named Edward, steps right through the portal, and he does not look happy. He immediately spots the contraband, wondering aloud who'd be dumb enough to try and cheat on his watch. Without a second thought, Edward disqualifies the culprit, ordering her name to be struck from the list. A powerful spell immediately traps Lehi, who cries out as the magic tightens its grip on her. She's then dragged into a swirling vortex, desperately screaming for her master to save her. All Belmont can do is watch in horror, yelling his loyal maid's name as she disappears completely. The examiner calmly turns back, telling the crowd he simply got rid of a shady demon. He scoffs at the shame of a demon trying to cheat their way into this prestigious exam. Edward then smugly declares, it's no wonder they're called the Clan of Disappointment. The whole crowd erupts in laughter, and even the descendants of heroes join in on the taunting. Belmont stays completely silent, his face hidden by shadows as he boils with a cold, hard rage. The examiner then turns on him, daring the young demon to say something and get booted with his friend. With a look of pure ice, Belmont swears he's going to make the examiner apologize for what he said. Edward just scoffs at the demon's nerve, asking what's so wrong with punishing a cheater. The Demon King clarifies that it's not about the cheating, it's about the insult to his loyal maid. The examiner just doubles down, calling Belmont a disgrace, who's only here because of Alice. Then, completely ignoring the demon, Edward channels his magic to officially kick off the exam. In a brilliant flash of light, a powerful teleportation spell zaps all the candidates away. They all reappear in a bizarre new place, a massive cliff that's shaped just like a dragon's wing. The hopefuls are totally stunned, realizing they're at the legendary Dragon Wings cliff right behind the academy. And laid out before them is the very first trial, a long, narrow bridge that leads straight to the main academy building. Edward explains that the test is simple. All they have to do is just walk across the bridge to get to the other side. He then gestures toward a massive bridge made of pure light, the sole pathway spanning the perilous chasm. The examiner lays it out plain and simple. Just get to the academy on the other side. But nobody's buying it, the candidates are on edge. Suddenly, a magical enchantment flares to life, confirming their suspicions this is definitely a trap. That's when Edward finally reveals the catch. Only the first 100 people to make it across in the next 30 minutes will pass. Then, with a grand, theatrical gesture, he officially kicks off the first trial. It's a complete free-for-all as every single wannabe hero stampedes onto the glowing walkway. But as they sprint forward, a weird sensation coming from the bridge puts everyone on high alert. Belmont, however, just calmly eyes the smooth surface, instantly picking up on the hidden danger. All of a sudden, the solid ground vanishes beneath them, and their feet start sinking right into the light itself. The entire bridge morphs into a sticky, goopy mess, trapping the frantic candidates right where they stand. One overly optimistic candidate shouts that crossing will be a piece of cake with a bit of focus, but the examiner just smirks, revealing the bridge is actually made of slime that ensnares anyone with weak magical control. And just like that, dozens of hopefuls find themselves sinking helplessly into the gooey trap. Anyone who can't properly control their elemental power is stuck tight, their progress grinding to a halt. This even includes the hero's own descendant, Alice, who's whining and struggling against the sticky surface. Meanwhile, her rival, N, just casually strolls by without a single problem, throwing some serious shade at Alice's terrible elemental control. The catgirl then zips ahead, leaving a fuming Alice to deal with it on her own. Alice realizes, completely frustrated, that all the other hero descendants are crossing this thing like it's nothing. The examiner then turns his smug gaze dying to see how that notorious demon is holding up, and he's not disappointed. Belmont is submerged nearly to his eyes and looks like he's finding the whole situation completely unbearable. The examiner cracks a smile, positive the demon's weak powers will keep him stuck there for good. But then Belmont blows everyone's minds by freestyle swimming through the slime with perfect form. Edward is absolutely floored, realizing the demon's level of control is better than some of the Academy's own teachers. But refusing to be impressed, the examiner decides it's time to crank up the difficulty. The other candidates aren't so lucky, though. They can barely move an inch in the sticky trap. Out of nowhere, the entire bridge lurches to life, swelling into a massive, terrifying wave of pure slime. The whole world gets flipped upside down as the candidates are tossed into the air by this bizarre assault. Slimy tendrils then erupt from the bridge, snatching a screaming student right out of the air. Even our Demon King is caught off guard by this sudden, chaotic twist. That's when the examiner reveals his final trick. The entire bridge is made of living, hungry slimes. Edward smirks, explaining that this giant slime is a tough challenge even for seasoned heroes. He then points out a teleportation array down below. If you fail to cross, you're out of the academy for good. But Anne is completely unfazed by the slime's grip, openly mocking its slow-motion attack. She just scoffs at its pathetic hold, deciding it's finally her turn to play. The giant slime can only look on in shock as the catgirl gets ready for her counterattack. With a furious beast claw, she effortlessly tears right through the gooey monster. Anne lands with a smug grin, taunting that size alone isn't enough to impress her. Meanwhile, the elf Rastana steps calmly onto the chaotic bridge. She faces down the menacing slime tendrils without a single trace of fear. Closing her eyes, Rastana gets ready to handle the threat in her own elegant style. A vortex of water magic begins to swirl around her, proving her incredible control. The bewildered slimes can only wonder what in the world is about to hit them. Their confusion quickly boils into rage, but her magic flash freezes them solid on the spot. Rastana just scoffs at them like they're a minor inconvenience, unleashing a deceptively gentle wave of immense power. With a single, graceful move, she shatters the entire slime army into a million frozen shards. But one stray piece of slime goes flying, managing to escape her perfect attack. The rogue glob hurtles toward a terrified student who can only scream for her life. Stepping in to save the day, Alice's hand crackles with the blazing power of a phoenix. She unleashes a torrent of fire, incinerating the slimy threat in a heartbeat. The hero's descendant once again proves her worth, saving a fellow candidate without even breaking a sweat. The rescued student stammers out her thanks, completely starstruck by Alice's power. Alice just coolly brushes her off, claiming the slime was simply getting in her way. But her flustered expression gives her away as she fumes about this ridiculously easy test. The examiner smirks, impressed by the hero's powerful aura and absolutely certain the demon brat is about to fail miserably. He watches the slimes, confident that Belmont's pathetic little power is no match for them. His smug expression completely shatters as he witnesses something that should be totally impossible. The Demon King is just sitting on top of a giant slime, surrounded by a horde of smaller slimes that are practically worshipping him. He calmly pats the creature, soothing it with a few gentle words in its own language. Edward is absolutely floored, realizing the boy is speaking the long-extinct slime language. He knows taming a beast like that requires an incredible amount of demonic power, something Belmont shouldn't possibly have. Belmont throws a smug look back at him, a glowing sigil visible on his tongue. The examiner instantly recognizes the advanced magic, the legendary blessing of speech. Edward realizes the demon brat somehow used his minuscule power reserves to cast an expert-level spell. Unwilling to be shown up, the examiner decides it's time to crank up the difficulty. He pulls out a mysterious-looking vial, ready to juice up the slimes with a nasty surprise. The once-tamed slime monster lets out a furious roar, its eyes glowing with a newfound rage. Dark, spiky tendrils erupt from the beast, lashing out straight at the Demon King. Belmont is sent flying by the sudden, vicious betrayal of his new friend. He lands with expert precision, bracing himself for the next round of attacks. The entire bridge seems to writhe to life, now a sea of dark tendrils ready to strike at any moment. The slime monster transforms into a shadowy nightmare, its friendly demeanor completely gone. Belmont realizes this sudden power-up is anything but natural. Somebody is cheating. The enraged beast unleashes a deadly flurry of shadowy tendrils, aiming to finish him off for good. Trapped on the bridge, the Demon King knows there's no way to dodge the attack. The examiner gloats from the sidelines, excited to finally see the trash demon get disqualified. But a sudden blast of phoenix fire intercepts the deadly assault. Belmont braces for impact, only to be suddenly yanked out of harm's way. His unexpected savior is none other than the hero's descendant, Alice. She checks on the slime-covered demon, a rare look of actual concern on her face. The Demon King is completely stunned, wondering why his rival would even bother to save him. Alice starts stammering, caught completely off guard by his direct question. She quickly denies any concern, claiming the slime was just in her line of fire. The examiner watches all of this, annoyed that Alice's interference is complicating his little scheme. Deciding to retrieve his booster, he reaches through a portal toward the slime. But the powered-up slime monster has other ideas. A wicked grin spreads across its face as it rises up, ready for a fight. It sucks in every last slime on the bridge, growing into a colossal beast. Both Belmont and Alice are totally floored by the creature's sudden transformation. The examiner's scheme blows up in his face as he completely loses control of the monster. He realizes in sheer terror that his dimensional magic is totally useless against this mutated freak. Left with no other option, Alice unleashes her full power, determined to finish this thing on her own. But her mighty flames just sputter out, doing absolutely nothing to the monster's shadowy body. Alice is in complete shock, realizing the slime has somehow become totally immune to her fire magic. That's when Belmont reveals the creature was fed a forbidden potion, the blood of a corrupted python. The hero's heir can only gawk, having never heard of such a dark concoction. He explains it's a booster that brings a creature back to just 1% of its full potential. Alice is absolutely horrified. She processes that this terrifying beast is only using a tiny fraction of its real strength. The Demon King adds that slimes are a special case. They can fuse together and combine their power. This monster is the result of countless slimes merging into a single, horrifying being. Another barrage of fiery blasts turns out to be completely useless against the fused monstrosity. The slime monster emerges from the smoke, stretching its wicked grin wider than ever. Alice is fuming that her elemental magic is worthless, just like Belmont said it would be. She snaps at him, demanding a real plan instead of his smug running commentary. Belmont calmly reveals that he does, in fact, have a strategy, and she's the key to pulling it off. The impatient hero's descendant tells him to spit it out already before they both end up as Monster Chow. Without saying another word, he reaches out and yanks the noble girl close, pulling her into a sudden, intimate embrace. His eyes are glowing with a strange power. The hero's descendant is left utterly speechless by his ridiculously bold move. He kicks off his master plan with a surprise kiss, shocking the young noble into total silence. The Demon King announces he's activating the legendary cultivation of yin and yang. Alice is completely short-circuiting, her mind totally fried from the sudden transfer of power. A massive surge of vital energy flows between the Demon King and the hero's heir. He begins to channel the forbidden magic, getting ready to unleash its full potential. Even the slime monster is just staring, baffled by their bizarre team-up tactic. But then Belmont realizes with a jolt the ancient magic isn't working. The hero's descendant, on the other hand, is feeling a whole different kind of energy. Pure, unadulterated rage. Completely fed up with his methods, Alice decides it's time he got a taste of her power. Her fist makes contact, setting off an explosion that rocks the entire bridge. As he's lying in the crater she just made, she furiously lays into him for his outrageous stunt. The dazed Demon King can only conclude that the noble girl is way scarier than any monster. But despite her fury, Alice puts the mission first and orders him to go get reinforcements. He staggers to his feet, coldly informing her she'll be digested by the monster long before he could ever get back. Livid at his brutal honesty, she tries to kick him right back down, telling him to just die already. But this time he catches her foot, asking why she's so hellbent on fighting this thing alone. She declares with absolute conviction that a hero's duty is to protect the people. Her words leave him stunned, reminding him of the very hero who sealed him away and making him wonder if the people includes him. But their moment is shattered when the shadowy beast lunges forward to attack. The hero's descendant is caught completely off guard by the sudden assault. She reacts in a split second, summoning a massive magical shield to block the incoming tendrils, but her defense immediately starts to crack. Her current strength is nowhere near enough to halt the creature. Then, with a horrifying crunch, the beast's shadowy tentacle shatters her barrier, but Belmont shoves her out of the way, taking the full brunt of the monster's devastating blow himself. The dark tendril detonates on impact, flooding the entire bridge with sinister energy as Belmont uses his own body to shield the hero's descendant from the blast that hurls them through the air. Stunned by the sheer force of the blast, Alice coughs and sputters amidst the thick smoke. Furious, she demands to know why he'd throw himself in front of the attack, insisting this is no time for him to be playing the hero. Belmont throws her own ideals back at her, questioning if a hero's duty really includes protecting demons. His deep question strikes a nerve, leaving the hero's heir utterly speechless, and he follows it up with a shocking declaration. He proclaims that he will pass this test and become a hero in his own right, leaving Alice to gape at him, completely dumbfounded by the Demon King's unbelievable new ambition. A beet-red Alice shatters the tense atmosphere, demanding to know just how long he plans on lying on top of her. Meanwhile, the shadowy slime creature towers above them, getting ready for another attack, and Alice starts to panic, realizing there's no cover left on the bridge. But Belmont calmly says they don't need to stop it at all, a suggestion that leaves the hero's heir completely bewildered. He grabs her hand, telling her to hush and concentrate on his bizarre plan, and she feels a weird tingling as all of her magical energy gets siphoned directly into her palm. Belmont cracks a smirk, commenting that while her raw talent is impressive, her control over it is still pretty sloppy. The noble girl can only stare back in disbelief, demanding to know what in the world he just did to her. He explains his plan is to use all the power she's been wasting in a much more effective way, adding that, even without his full strength, Demon King boasts he has more than enough juice to clinch the victory. confidently proclaiming that as the Demon King, he will always find a path to triumph. An incredible surge of demonic power explodes from his body, leaving Alice completely awestruck by his true nature as the shadowy slime monster lets out a roar. Totally unfazed by his flashy power-up, it lunges forward, aiming to flatten the duo with its enormous, shadowy body. Belmont unleashes a devastating move, the Infernal Demon Gun, channeling every last bit of his power into a single hand. His demonic energy blasts right through the monster like a massive spear of pure rage, and the creature is completely obliterated, its shadowy form vaporizing into thin air. He shields Alice from the aftershock, landing with perfect grace in the middle of the wreckage. To his surprise, Belmont realizes the intense fight has actually restored a fraction of his former powers, and now that the monster is gone, the way to the academy is finally open. Over at the finish line, the other candidates are waiting anxiously, assuming the test must be over by now. Meanwhile, the examiner is in a full-blown panic, absolutely terrified of what the powerful Razeth family will do when they find out Alice has vanished. But a student's shout cuts through the tense air as a figure appears through the smoke, and Edward's face instantly lights up with a glimmer of hope, hardly daring to believe what he's seeing. He's ecstatic that Alice is safe, but he's even more thrilled that the demon brat is probably toast. His jaw hits the floor as Belmont himself strolls out of the chaos, carrying the hero's descendant in his arms. The examiner's momentary relief evaporates, replaced by pure, unadulterated fury, while Belmont coolly announces their success, much to the chagrin of the other exhausted nobles. The crowd erupts into a flurry of whispers, completely shocked to see the heir of the hero being carried by a demon. Belmont grinds his teeth, realizing that even after a display of overwhelming strength, in their eyes, he's still nothing more than an outcast. Meanwhile, the hero's heir is practically fuming in his arms, swearing revenge, while Belmont just tries to get through the ordeal. Edward offers fake congratulations to the successful candidates, officially ending the first trial, but his smile morphs into a sneer as he focuses on the kid from the Demon Clan. The examiner immediately disqualifies Belmont right on the spot, accusing him of cheating his way through the entire test. Our Demon King is left completely floored by the utterly baseless accusation. The crowd instantly falls for the lie, convinced a demon could never pass legitimately. As Belmont tries to argue his case, his rival suddenly steps forward to intervene. Alice stands her ground, boldly informing the examiner that Belmont was with her the entire time. She grudgingly admits that without his help, she would have failed, which proves he couldn't have cheated. The Demon King is caught completely off guard by her fierce and unexpected defense, but Edward just dismisses her testimony, reminding her of the Demon Clan's dark past. He lectures her about the former Demon King, who used his race's innate magic to wage war and conquest. The examiner gives all the credit to her grandmother, Arya, for sealing that king and crippling the entire demon race's power. His eyes narrow as he gets ready to deliver his final, damning point. Edward declares that without their main power source, a demon like Belmont could only have passed by cheating. Completely ignoring Alice, he starts casting a spell to punish the cheater himself. A huge surge of energy crackles around him as he gathers his magic, the examiner's eyes glowing a stark white. He's all set to unleash his judgment on the young demon, but Belmont interrupts his big speech with a perfectly timed punch to the face. The crowd can only gawk in stunned silence as the examiner hits the floor. Belmont stands over the downed official, calling out his entire argument as nothing more than pure speculation. The examiner clutches his jaw, failing in disbelief that a student actually dared to hit him. The Demon King's eyes glow with a menacing light, warning him that the only reason he's still breathing is because Belmont wants to get into the academy. From the crowd, Ristana recognizes his incredible control, despite his seemingly weak demonic abilities. She realizes with a jolt of shock that he can even cancel another person's spell right in the middle of being cast. The bruised examiner staggers to his feet, enraged that a mere demon brat would dare to defy him, but a new voice slices through the tension, amused by the interesting student they have found. A mysterious woman steps out into the light, declaring that she will personally entertain the young demon. The entire crowd gasps when they realize this powerful newcomer is the academy's own principal. The principal completely ignores the drama, warmly greeting Alice and commenting on how much she has grown up. The bruised examiner begs the principal to let him handle his own mess, but the powerful woman cuts him short, addressing him simply as Edward. She coolly informs the stammering official that she will be taking over from here. The principal then turns her full, intimidating attention to the young demon, Belmont, radiating a terrifying aura. Grand Magister Karen Lynn gets right to the point. Did you cheat? Belmont feels the overwhelming pressure from her presence, realizing this is the legendary youngest principal in the Academy's history. Even Alice is shocked by the sheer force of the Grand Magister's magic. Completely unfazed, the Demon King looks her dead in the eye and flatly denies the accusation. The principal accepts his answer with a cryptic smile, motioning for him to follow her. In a brilliant flash of light, she teleports them to a grand new location, a mysterious hall. The teleportation spell dumps them out unceremoniously, leaving Alice totally spun around. She gawks at the strange, imposing chamber, trying to figure out where the principal just zapped them. They've landed in a massive council hall, surrounded by shadowy figures watching their every move. The silent council members stare down from the stands, their faces completely cloaked in darkness. The principal greets them with a confident smirk, welcoming them to the very seat of power. She introduces herself as Karen Lin, the head of the academy and its highest council. And to prove their worth, she announces they now have to face another individual test. Both Belmont and Alice are completely blindsided by this sudden challenge. Alice immediately objects, demanding to know why they're being tested again when they already passed fair and square. The principal calmly explains the simple reason. They both broke the academy's rules. The principal lays it out. The academy's only purpose is to train heroes to defeat the Demon King. She then brings up an unwritten rule that bans demons and limits powerful families to just one student per generation. Alice grits her teeth, absolutely furious that she's being trapped by a convenient loophole. But Belmont calls her bluff, asking how an unspoken rule can even be considered a rule in the first place. He confidently declares that the only rule that matters is the one in writing. Pass the test, you get in. Simple. His bold defiance sends a wave of whispers through the shadowy council. A frantic Alice tries to shut him up, positive he's about to get them both thrown out on their ears. The Demon King just shrugs her off, saying he's only speaking the truth. Looking amused, the principal concedes his point and promises their special test will be simple. Her first question, however, is a loaded one. Why do they want to join the academy? Alice proudly announces she wants to be a hero who protects people, just like her grandmother, the legendary Arya. The principal then turns to Belmont, asking about his own grand ambition. Belmont boldly states his goal is to end the discrimination against the demon race. His declaration sends the shadowy council into a furious uproar, but the principal just chuckles, completely unfazed by their outrage. She finds their conflicting goals, one a hero, the other a savior for demons, incredibly entertaining. The principal admits she's now quite intrigued to see what kind of future the two of them will create. With a simple flick of her finger, she begins their special test. Two glowing rings of light suddenly materialize, hovering right above their heads. She reveals these are the legendary rings of demolition, forged by the hero Arya herself. The principal explains that only the more powerful of the two will be chosen by the ring and earn the title of hero. Belmont immediately asks about the fate of the one who fails the ring's judgment. With chilling indifference, she declares the loser will be stripped of their power and eliminated on the spot. Alice staggers back in shock, realizing this special test is actually a duel to the death. Belmont scoffs at her ignorance, questioning how she could possibly know so little about her own grandmother's creations. The would-be hero fumes, blaming some mysterious family member for keeping her in the dark about her own family's history. Karen Lin breaks down the brutal terms. Survival is the only way to pass. She then offers them one last chance to back out, a smug challenge gleaming in her eyes. Alice's confidence falters, the immense pressure to be chosen suddenly crushing her resolve. Seeing the fear in her eyes, Belmont couldn't resist a little jab, asking if the so-called future hero was already thinking about throwing in the towel. A totally flustered Alice snapped back, insisting she would never give up, especially not to some pint-sized demon. The principal just smirked, noting their fighting spirit before officially kicking off the deadly trial. With grim determination, the two rivals prepared to slide on the legendary rings. They each slipped the artifact onto their finger, sealing their fate in this sudden death showdown. Now facing each other in the grand hall, the stage was set for their final judgment. But when nothing happened, Alice was completely baffled, naively wondering if maybe they had already passed. Belmont, on the other hand, sensed a dark power stirring. Realizing something was emerging from the ring, a torrent of sinister purple energy exploded from the artifacts, flooding the chamber with pure dread. The shadowy power swirled together into two massive, menacing forms that loomed right over them. Without any warning, the dark energy lanced down, plunging directly into both of their bodies. As the dark energy invaded Belmont's body, his expression remained completely calm. A spectral judge materialized, declaring it would weigh the sins and desires of his soul. Belmont just scoffed, totally unimpressed by some mirroring demon trying to intimidate him. The judge roared with fury, enraged by the young demon's incredible arrogance, but its rage faltered the moment it sensed something impossibly ancient within the boy's soul. A terrifying, shadowy figure loomed behind the judge, the true form of the Demon King. The spectral judge trembled in absolute terror as the real Demon King asked if it was going to approve him or not. With a simple command, Belmont dismissed the dark energy, having easily passed his internal trial. The principal smiled, impressed that the legendary ring of demolition had approved of him. But across the hall, Alice was crying out in agony, still trapped in a brutal battle with her own inner demon. The ring was preying on Alice's deepest fears, playing cruel words about her family's disappointment. Voices from her past mocked her magical talent and tried to pressure her into a marriage she never wanted. The spectral judge twisted itself into the form of her greatest insecurity, the voice of a disapproving parent. The principal watched with amusement, finding the hero's heir's internal struggle rather entertaining. Overwhelmed, Alice collapsed, power completely drained by the relentless assault on her mind. Her inner demon manifested as a giant spectral warrior, ready to land the final blow. But Belmont intervened, firing a small blast of demonic energy to save his rival. The spectral warrior easily shrugged off the pathetic little attack, completely unfazed. His blast didn't even leave a scratch, proving just how weak his current powers really were. The principal smirked, telling the Demon King his meager strength was useless here. The principal then launched into a lecture on the world's unspoken rules, from vengeance to discrimination. Alice struggled against the dark energy, weakly insisting she didn't need his help. Belmont just ignored the principal, questioning the entire premise of the ring's judgment. He realized that failing to become a hero meant facing a far darker fate. Without another word, the Demon King grabbed the struggling hero's hair. He caught the spectral warrior's blade with his bare hand, stopping the final blow right in its tracks. Belmont stood his ground, shielding Alice from the full force of her inner demon. Both the principal and the heir to the hero's legacy were left completely stunned by his intervention. He just scoffs at the whole hero concept, calling it a total burden someone else forces on you. The Demon King declares that the only thing that matters is protecting the girl right in front of him. Alice is left completely stunned, her heart pounding at his out-of-the-blue confession. Tears start to well up in her eyes as she calls him an idiot, totally overwhelmed by his willingness to sacrifice himself. He starts channeling a familiar ancient power, a golden sigil blazing to life on his chest. The Demon King definitely recognizes this feeling. It's the legendary cultivation of yin and yang. By merging their power, he prepares to unleash that forbidden technique all over again. A blinding tidal wave of energy erupts from them, completely vaporizing the spectral warrior. The entire council hall is left glowing in the aftermath of their incredible power. Even the principal looks impressed, clapping with genuine delight at the amazing show. With a satisfied smirk, she declares that they've both passed the deadly test. Exhausted but victorious, the Demon King holds up the hero's heir, their rivalry now morphing into something else entirely. Belmont lets out a huge sigh of relief, totally wiped out but triumphant after clearing that brutal test. But the tender moment is completely shattered when Alice wakes up and realizes she's still in his arms. Her furious scream echoes across the academy grounds, demanding that he let her go that instant. The next day, the opening ceremony officially kicks off their new school life. Belmont finds Lehi, who assures him she's fine after getting booted from the exam. The loyal maid immediately senses the tense atmosphere, realizing the academy is already swarming with rivals, but Belmont points out a far more critical detail she's overlooked: his brand new school uniform. Lehi just stares with comical seriousness, wondering what grand, strategic point her lord is trying to make. With a dramatic flourish, the Demon King points her attention to a new arrival. A flashy bunny girl is striking a pose, demanding everyone check her out instead. At the same time, a mysterious hooded figure spots their target, pointing with grim purpose. The newcomer is a short-haired elf girl, her eyes laser-focused on someone in the crowd. It hits Belmont that the academy is loaded with potential partners for his yin and yang cultivation. He concludes this must be the only way to revive the demon clan, much to Lei's utter dismay. To help him on his noble mission, Lehi hands him a mysterious book from the clan elders. He's shocked to discover it's an incredibly thorough guide to interspecies romance. A blushing, Lehi explains the book is meant to assist him with his cultivation. Genuinely touched by her sacrifice, the Demon King vows to study hard for the future of his clan. Lehi promises to provide her full support from the shadows as he begins his critically important research. With fresh resolve, the Demon King is ready to take on his first day at the Hero Academy. Belmont strides through the campus, vowing not to let Lei's efforts be in vain. He finds his classroom, ready to do absolutely anything for the sake of the Demon Clan. He steals his resolve, prepared to make any sacrifice necessary for his clan's revival. With unwavering determination, he pushes open the door to his new life. But his epic entrance is met by a classroom absolutely jam-packed with ridiculously muscular dudes. The brawny students are thrilled, already arguing over who gets to welcome the new demon first. He instantly slams the door shut as the horrifying realization hits him. The academy's classes are completely gender-segregated. A teacher confirms his worst fears, saying boys and girls only mix during special events. The Demon King's brain just short-circuits, completely mortified by his absolute failure to do even the most basic research. The teacher moves on, calling on the new class representative, Lester Field, to give a speech. A smug-looking student in a pristine white uniform gets up to address the class. This is Lester, son of an earl, and he makes it a point for everyone to remember his prestigious title. The classroom erupts in whispers, awestruck by his family's wealth and their powerful summoning magic. Lester soaks in the attention, internally scoffing at the commoners who are so impressed by his status. After his brief and pompous speech, the teacher dismisses the new class representative back to his seat. Walking away, he scoffs at his classmates, believing Alice is the only one worthy of being his rival. But then his thoughts drift to the entrance exam, and his gaze locks onto Belmont. He sees with rage, furious that Alice was tainted by some lowlife from the Demon Clan. With a sinister smirk, the arrogant noble vows to get his revenge. Belmont senses the hostility but is completely unimpressed by his new rival's glare. Belmont just wonders why this pompous noble is giving him the evil eye. He remembers Lehi's advice to try and smile to get along with his classmates. Taking his loyal maid's words to heart, he decides to give it a shot. His face twitches, struggling to form an expression he hasn't used in centuries. In a moment like this, the Demon King knows exactly what to do. He unleashes a smile that is 100% pure, unfiltered demonic contempt. The noble heir recoils in absolute terror from the horrifying grin. Lester is completely baffled, wondering what in the world kind of smile that was. The friendly gesture is immediately misinterpreted as a chilling death threat. As tensions escalate inside, the Academy Day continues peacefully outside. The other nobles immediately start sucking up to Lester, hoping to get on his good side. But the arrogant heir has no time for their pathetic attempts at flattery. He's still fuming, convinced he needs to make an example out of these commoners. Deciding enough is enough, Lester resolves to put the demon brat in his place. The class watches in anticipation as the noble heir storms toward his target. He gets right in Belmont's face, demanding an explanation for his disrespect. The Demon King is completely baffled, having absolutely no idea what set the noble off. Lester finally reveals his true motive, furiously questioning Belmont's connection to Lady Alice. Still forcing his terrifying smile, Belmont casually dismisses her as just an acquaintance. Taking this as a declaration of war, Lester powers up, ready to settle this with a duel. His eyes blaze with fury as he challenges the demon to a fight. A massive surge of summoning magic erupts, filling the entire classroom. Belmont watches the dramatic display with a flicker of recognition in his eyes. The energy forms a terrifying chimera, a monstrous beast made of shadow and rage. Lester proudly boasts about his family's legendary summoning technique. The class is blown away, hailing the young noble as a once-in-a-generation genius, but the Demon King just looks confused, as if he's seen this supposedly terrifying beast before. The arrogant noble warns Belmont to stay away from Alice or face his wrath. Ignoring the threat completely, Belmont casually walks up and pets the giant monster. Lester can only scream in disbelief, as his ultimate weapon acts like a common house pet. But Lester's cool facade shatters as he panics, admitting he has no real control over the beast. The wild chimera lets out a roar, about to unleash its raw, untamed power all over the classroom. Our Demon King remembers that the chimera is actually a legendary, shape-shifting beast from his own clan. This ancient creature is so powerful it used to smash city walls with a single punch. Back in the Great War, just 5 of these bad boys were enough to take out an army of thousands. This noble's dumb move just brought a walking nuke into a classroom full of kids. Totally unfazed, Belmont calmly reaches out and tells the furious beast there's no need to be scared. He talks to it like they're old buddies, feeling its pain from being trapped by some second-rate magic. The chimera is just completely stunned, its rage just melts away, replaced by total confusion. The whole class is in awe as this demon kid somehow tames the untamable, leaving Lester completely dumbfounded. Lester figures it's time to get his dignity back by sending this thing back to where it came from. He desperately tries to unsummon it, casting a powerful binding spell. Magical chains burst out and wrap around the chimera, trying to force it to submit. But the legendary beast just growls, its glowing eyes filled with pure disdain for such weak magic. Lester's confidence completely shatters when he realizes his spell is failing, big time. With a furious roar, the chimera easily shatters the magical chains. The arrogant noble can only watch in horror as his own ultimate weapon turns against him. All of a sudden, Belmont jumps into action, kicking off a nearby wall with insane speed. He vaults right over the rampaging beast, getting into position for a counterattack. In the blink of an eye, the Demon King snags the chimera, easily overpowering the out-of-control monster. With just one hand, he effortlessly shuts down the rampaging beast's power. He then sends the legendary monster packing, leaving everyone completely shocked. Belmont just stands there calmly in the middle of the wreckage, facing the stunned noble. Lester can only sputter, totally unable to wrap his head around what just happened. The Demon King chews him out for treating such a delicate creature so roughly. The snooty noble is left completely speechless by this weird lecture. With the chimera's shadow looming over him, Belmont makes it clear who's in charge. He promises to free the beast from its miserable forced service. A demonic symbol glows in his eye as he gets ready to shatter the binding spell. He zeroes in on his target, the control core lodged deep inside the monster's throat. He channels his power, preparing to obliterate the device controlling the legendary beast. With a single, precise strike, he unleashes a blast that frees the chimera from its chains. The arrogant noble is just stunned into silence. His entire worldview is shattered by the demon's insane power. But then, a tiny little meow cuts through the shocked silence, grabbing everyone's attention. The terrifying super weapon has turned into an adorable, but very angry, little kitten. Lester is instantly in love, totally confused by the legendary monster's real form. Belmont casually explains that this monster is pretty much just one of his old pets from back home. He scoops up the little guy and declares that its original, cuddly form is obviously the best one. Now that it's free, the Demon King decides to adopt the beast, giving it a pretty unique new name. But Lester refuses to be shown up, vowing that his rivalry for Alice's heart has only just begun. Belmont schools the noble, telling him that women aren't some prize to be won in a fight, and then he whips out his dating guide. He smugly declares the importance of doing your homework, while the clueless noble mistakes the racy novel for some kind of powerful spellbook. Belmont coolly claims he's been poring over its profound teachings lately. He then calls on his new pet to help him with a little show and tell. A flash of red energy suddenly envelops the tiny creature, kicking off a dramatic transformation. The kitten morphs into a gorgeous catgirl, leaving everyone completely stunned. Meanwhile, Lehi is cleaning Belmont's room, just hoping his first day is going smoothly. That's when she stumbles across a second book, one that looks even more suggestive. But a quick peek inside reveals it's just the wholesome, all-ages version of the book. Back in the classroom, Belmont announces it's time for an extracurricular lesson, holding up his advanced textbook. The book's mature rating proves this is some seriously advanced stuff. Elsewhere, Alice is dragging Anne along on a mission, who can't help but tease her about her real motives. Anne jokingly threatens to snatch the handsome demon boy for herself, which really gets under Alice's skin. The flustered heir to the hero's legacy insists she just wants to thank him, but claims she can't go by herself. Anne immediately calls her out as a classic tsundere, seeing right through her flimsy excuses. They finally make it to Belmont's classroom, ready to confront the young demon, but the sight that greets Alice leaves her blushing and totally speechless. Belmont is in the middle of a very hands-on demonstration for a captivated, yet stone-faced audience. Anne is completely impressed by his sheer nerve, while Alice is just plain horrified. Lester, on the other hand, is a total convert, vowing to follow his new big bro, Belmont, for the rest of his life. Spotting the newcomers, Belmont innocently asks if Alice is there for his special lesson too. A furious Alice immediately denies it, yelling at the pervert for his scandalous display. His first day ends with a 100% approval rating from the guys and a disastrous 1000% rating with the girls. The next day, Belmont strolls into class, figuring everyone's already heard about yesterday's little incident. Inside, Lester has already laid down a new law. Everyone must greet their big bro. The classroom door swings open, and the class eagerly awaits the arrival of their new leader. As Belmont steps inside, the entire room of buff dudes shouts a heartfelt, "Good morning, big bro." But the Demon King just walks right past his new fan club without even a sideways glance, completely absorbed in his book. Lester and his crew can only stare in disbelief as their grand welcome is totally ignored. The noble heir and his new followers are left utterly speechless by the cold shoulder. His confused lackeys demand an explanation, but Lester is already lost in thought. He decides their leader's silence wasn't a snub, but a challenge to earn his respect. Lester concludes that their pathetic greetings were simply unworthy of his new big bro. The following day, he tries a royal greeting, kneeling in a full suit of armor to prove his loyalty. Another student attempts a crisp military salute, but Belmont doesn't even bat an eye. Even a deep, gangster-style bow fails to get any reaction from the preoccupied Demon King. Later in the cafeteria, Lester feels completely dejected, since every single one of his grand gestures has been ignored. He starts to spiral, overthinking every last detail of his failed greetings. Meanwhile, Belmont is just calmly enjoying his lunch, totally oblivious to the noble's existential crisis. Belmont's only concern is his desperate need to find a cultivation partner. He's bummed that Alice is giving him the cold shoulder, since she's his only female acquaintance at the entire academy. Meanwhile, somewhere else, the hero's heir is practically boiling over, mangling her spoon in a fit of pure rage. Surrounded by a mountain of plates, she's stress-eating, absolutely furious that Belmont even exists. But just then, a hand smacks down hard on Belmont's table, completely shattering his concentration. It's N, the cat girl, who calls out to the Demon King with a nickname that's a little too familiar. He knows her immediately from that, let's call it, special private lesson. She cuts right to the chase, skipping the small talk and making him a very forward offer. Leaning in real close, she whispers the one secret he was sure was totally safe. The Demon King is completely blindsided, wondering how this total stranger knows about his forbidden magic. Nearby, Lester literally falls out of his chair, shocked to see N getting all chummy with his new idol. He tries to make sense of it, figuring she must just be blown away by Belmont's incredible wisdom. Playing it cool, the Demon King agrees to her proposal, ready to follow her lead. But all the way across the cafeteria, a ceramic bowl cracks under the pressure of a very angry grip. Alice shoots up from her seat, her jealousy practically radiating for everyone to see. She furiously demands to know what in the world N plans to do with Belmont in broad daylight. N just flashes a smug little smirk, revealing she was just asking him about the student union and even invites Alice to tag along. The hero's heir is left totally dumbfounded, her jealous outburst now looking completely ridiculous. Belmont glances over, questioning Alice's sudden and overly dramatic entrance. Caught in her own trap of jealousy, all Alice can do is grind her teeth in silent rage. A flustered Alice just snaps that she doesn't need their pity and storms off in a huff. Belmont and N simply carry on, leaving the fuming hero's heir in their dust. But lurking in the shadows, a determined Lester watches his new role model walk off, vowing to follow his big bro everywhere to learn his profound secrets to success. Once they're alone, Belmont cuts right to the chase, demanding to know what N really wants from him. The catgirl just smirks again, admitting she has a very particular objective in mind for our Demon King. She brazenly suggests they practice the legendary cultivation of yin and yang together. The Demon King is floored, demanding to know how she found out about his secret art. and nonchalantly explains that the magic was actually invented by the hero Arya, specifically to seal the original Demon King. Belmont is absolutely mortified, realizing the legendary hero created that very personal spell just for him, and continues, pointing out that demons are supposed to be powerless here, yet he's already shown off some incredible strength. She correctly deduces that his power must be linked to that legendary yin and yang technique. The Demon King starts to panic, realizing that if she spills the beans, he's totally screwed. But then, the cat girl reveals there's a very specific requirement for using the technique. Belmont is left totally in the dark, having no idea what she's getting at, and that's when she drops a massive bombshell. The user has to be a complete virgin, something an incubus could never, ever be. With that, N accuses him of using a totally different and much cruder power siphoning technique on that exhausted girl, Alice. The Demon King internally breathes a massive sigh of relief, grateful that his incredibly embarrassing secret is still under wraps. He quickly gets his cool back, asking why she'd even bring up the forbidden art in the first place. With a sly grin, N hints that she, on the other hand, has already prepared herself for the intimate ritual. Her fingertips start glowing with golden energy, revealing her true deadly intentions. With a maniacal grin, N lunges forward, her claws aimed right at the Demon King. But Belmont doesn't even flinch, watching this sudden betrayal with an air of cold, detached indifference. Out of nowhere, Lester bolts from the shadows, yelling a frantic warning to his hero. For a split second, the eyes of the assailant, the victim, and the would-be savior lock in a tense standoff. Without a second thought, the loyal nobleman dives in front of Belmont, taking the full brunt of the deadly attack. Lester, completely ignoring his own safety, desperately checks to see if his idol is okay. Belmont just waves off his concern, far more curious about why he was attacked, and scoffs, clearly annoyed. She gripes that her fun was ruined by the meddling. With a smirk, she tells the Demon King he got lucky this time, and continues to mock him, wondering aloud just how long a puny little incubus can last in this academy. And with one last agile leap, the mysterious catgirl disappears into the cityscape. At the same time, deep within a shadowy chamber, the clandestine council watches the events at the academy unfold. One member seethes, complaining that the brat from the demonic clan is fitting in way too easily. Another shadowy figure chimes in, blaming a certain influential relative for the demon's progress. A member with glowing eyes cuts them off, tired of their vague and annoying riddles. The first member just chuckles, admitting he had that coming. A crystal ball displays the scene from the cafeteria, revealing Belmont's rapidly growing influence among the students. Another member sarcastically thanks someone named Alice for allowing a demon into their midst, but the glowing-eyed figure furiously slams their fist on the table, roaring at them to show some respect. But another shadowy figure brushes off the worry, stepping forward to reveal he is the council president. The student council president, Adonis Roseth, coolly states that he has already dispatched someone to take care of the situation. Elsewhere, Belmont mulls over his mission. To restore his powers, he needs to cultivate yin and yang energy with a female partner. A map of the academy grounds reveals a major problem. The boys' and girls' dorms are on completely opposite sides. He groans at the lack of opportunities. His gaze drifts over a few potential candidates. Then it hits him. The upcoming mixed gender combat training is his one and only golden opportunity. Unfortunately, Lester and his new fan club have formed a human wall around him, swearing to keep any and all distractions away from their big bro. The mighty Demon King is practically being suffocated by his overenthusiastic new bodyguards. He orders them to back off, but Lester insists that he's surrounded by danger. The noble heir points a shaky finger towards N, absolutely certain the catgirl is lying in wait to ambush his hero. From a distance, N just watches, a smug look locked on the Demon King. Belmont says nothing, totally unbothered by the so-called threat. He finally grabs Lester by the collar, telling him to give him some space so he can actually breathe. But the noble heir completely misinterprets the gesture, thinking he's just been officially promoted to #1 subordinate. Lester pledges his eternal loyalty, even trying to copy his big bro's intimidating grin. But their little moment is cut short when a new challenger grabs Belmont's shoulder. A red-haired student named Brian starts running his mouth, calling him an arrogant demon brat. Lester's face goes pale with panic as he immediately recognizes the infamous upperclassman. Brian sneers that he just had to see the shameless demon who weaseled his way into the academy. Belmont calmly notes that if Brian is a senior in their class, it must mean he failed last year's exams. Absolutely livid at the insult, Brian throws a magically charged fist straight at Belmont's face. Lester recognizes the enchantment, realizing the upperclassman's power is easily on the level of a professional hero. The devoted underling screams for his big bro to dodge the incoming blow, but all Brian does is smirk, thinking his first punch would be more than enough to teach the demon a lesson. But his smug look instantly morphs into one of pure, unadulterated shock. Belmont effortlessly plucks the magically charged fist out of the air, stopping the attack dead in its tracks. A new catgirl suddenly materializes, perched casually on the upperclassman's shoulder, and immediately starts scolding the hot-headed senior, asking if it's physically possible for him to go one day without stirring up trouble. Another student chimes in, telling them to keep it down before class officially starts. Brian just smirks, fascinated by the Demon Kid's surprising show of force. Lester confirms the rumors are spot on, leaving Belmont completely baffled. The loyal noble then reveals that his scheme to take out his big bro is already in the works. He explains that Brian is a violent dude who was held back a year, with strength that could rival a professional hero. Lester figures that some powerful player must be pulling the strings behind the scenes to involve a descendant of a hero. An instructor announces the start of combat training, a hunt for demonic puppets in the forest. Right on cue, glowing green portals appear, ready to whisk the students away to the training grounds. The rules are simple. Teams of 2 get teleported to random locations and have to hunt for 4 hours. Lester is absolutely stoked about the team-up rule, seeing it as the perfect chance to protect his beloved big bro. But when he turns around to partner up, his big bro has already vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, the hot-headed senior and his catgirl partner step through their portal. Brian warns his partner to stay out of his way, claiming that Belmont is his personal prey. The unimpressed catgirl just mutters to herself about how loud he is. As they're getting ready to go through the portal, Brian yells for her to hurry up, but Belmont suddenly crashes their party, flying straight through their portal. He grabs the catgirl by the wrist, deciding on the spot that she's coming with him. The portal sucks them in, leaving a stunned and partnerless Brian standing there. Belmont and his newly acquired partner are sent plummeting toward the training grounds. They drop from an insane height, disappearing into the vast, dense forest canopy below. After a pretty rough landing, the annoyed catgirl demands to know what his problem is. Belmont just plays it cool, claiming he just wanted to talk in private as he scrambles for a handhold. His crash landing leaves him in a very compromising position with his new partner. The Demon King immediately launches into a clinical analysis of her beastman physiology. She just smirks, threatening to tell Alice all about his up-close and personal research, but her playful tone evaporates as golden claws spring from her fingertips. The catgirl lunges, revealing he's just stumbled right into her deadly trap. Belmont's eyes narrow, completely unfazed by the sudden ambush. A massive stone golem erupts from the earth, activated by her trap, but she easily shatters the monster herself, looking disappointed by its pathetic strength. As he gets to his feet, Belmont starts an impromptu lecture on golem mechanics. The catgirl turns around, completely baffled by his bizarre pop quiz. He continues his little lecture, explaining that destroying the golem's body without taking out its core is completely useless. As if on cue, the shattered golem begins to reform around the now not-so-smug catgirl. Her confident expression completely vanishes, shocked that her own trap has been turned against her. Before she can react, one of the massive stone monsters snatches her up. Trapped in its grip, she fumes, angry at being caught off guard and unable to break free. Belmont calmly explains that finding the core requires exceptional magic sensing abilities, and that's exactly why he needs a partner. The captured catgirl struggles, totally annoyed that he's roping her into this. She snaps that she's practically out of mana, making his whole plan sound like a total joke. But the Demon King just grabs her anyway, declaring that his eyes are more than enough to see right through them. A golden sigil flares to life in his eye as he unleashes his legendary mystic eyes. His mystic eyes immediately lock onto the golem's weakness, a core hidden right in its armpit. With one devastating punch, he completely shatters the golem's massive stone arm. Without a moment's hesitation, he launches himself at the next target. The second golem looms over him, but the Demon King is already poised to strike. His special sight pinpoints the next core, conveniently located right at its waist. A single swift kick is all it takes to obliterate the second monster and its core. He sticks the landing perfectly, surrounded by the rubble of his defeated foes. He stands, revealing his healing magic is finally under his complete control. Just as the catgirl starts to fall, he swoops in and catches her with effortless grace. Completely stunned by his power and precision, she starts to question everything she thought she knew about him. Belmont casually admits his limited mana was almost an issue, his mystic eyes still glowing faintly. The catgirl demands to know why he'd bother saving someone who was sent to take him out. He coolly explains that her assassination attempt was way too obvious to be the real deal. With his mystic eyes, he'd already seen through her entire scheme, but his special sight gave him a far more detailed view than she could have ever expected. He carries his flustered partner, a smug look plastered on his face. But then, the Demon King's composure finally cracks, completely overwhelmed by the unexpected scenery. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the forest, another student is having a much worse day. A furious Brian realizes that Demon Brat completely played him for a fool. Surrounded by the wreckage of defeated golems, the abandoned upperclassman vows to make Belmont pay for this. The catgirl frantically tries to wake the unconscious Demon King after his sudden collapse, but it's too late. His legendary absolute sight is activated, a power unique to his bloodline. This ability allows him to see the very essence of a person, their mana flow and internal structure. A major side effect, however, is that he can no longer recognize faces, and with his mana totally depleted, the powerful ability downgrades into what is essentially simple X-ray vision. The catgirl breathes a sigh of relief as he finally starts to stir from his daze. But his new vision gives him a far more revealing look at his partner than he bargained for. The ancient Demon King is completely overwhelmed, suffering a truly epic nosebleed. His partner is left utterly speechless, completely baffled by his extreme reaction. She scoffs at his incubus title, wondering how he could get so flustered by a little anatomy. Wiping away the evidence, Belmont hastily deactivates his powers, promising to be more careful. But his partner suddenly gets uncomfortably close, her curiosity totally piqued by his bizarre reaction. She introduces herself as Rostana and notes a unique scent coming from him, realizing he's no ordinary incubus. Rostana then asks if he has any idea why everyone is so dead set on kicking him out of the academy. She scoffs at his clueless answer, revealing that a true mastermind has been pulling the strings from the shadows all along. Then, the cat girl drops a bombshell. The person orchestrating his entire downfall is none other than Alice Roseth. The Demon King is left completely stunned, unable to believe his own rival would go to such extreme lengths. Rostana lays out the continent's tragic backstory, where an alliance of different races once united to fight a common enemy. But after the war, the humans snatched up most of the land, which led to widespread discrimination against all the other races. This new world order got the other races brutally kicked to the curb and oppressed. Rostana explains how humans now look down their noses at their former allies, calling them lowly races. She recalls their cruel jabs, claiming the oppressed should just be grateful they're allowed to exist at all. The catgirl points out how this sheer arrogance has been brewing deep resentment among the other races for years. She claims Alice's decision to bring a demon to the academy is the perfect excuse they've been waiting for to launch a new war. Therefore, taking out Belmont is now the human race's #1 priority to prevent total chaos. Rostana questions why he seems so unbothered. The Demon King just calls her whole theory ridiculous. He scoffs, completely unimpressed by her totally predictable, dime-a-dozen conspiracy plot. The Demon King then reveals that he has a very different read on the hero's heir. He knows Alice's true goal is to end racial conflict, and finds it a real shame she's so misunderstood. Belmont then completely flips the script, accusing Rostana of trying to use him to start her own war against the humans. Rostana is completely blindsided, and a single tear rolls down her cheek. She tries to play it cool, brushing off his accusation and suggesting they just wrap up training for the day, but their little chat is cut short when Brian dive-bombs them from above. The furious upperclassman declares that they're not going anywhere, trapping them with his magic. A powerful force slams them straight into the ground, pinning them in place. Belmont instantly figures out their attacker is manipulating gravity itself. Brian just gloats, promising to make this quick as payback for being ditched, but instead of fear, Rostana flashes a very confident, fanged grin. The upperclassman is baffled, mistaking her confidence for madness brought on by fear. She fires right back with a classic comeback, mocking his bravado with a very personal dig. Enraged, Brian roars that her little taunt just sealed her fate. Pinned down by his gravity magic, the two can only watch as the smug upperclassman closes in, but Belmont's sharp eyes catch a glimpse of a hidden item clutched in Rostana's hand. He recognizes the vial in an instant. It's the legendary and extremely dangerous dragon saliva. Their attacker powers up, vowing to tear them apart piece by piece. With perfect timing, the catgirl kicks their desperate counterplan into motion. She chugs the entire potion in one gulp, preparing for a massive power-up. The ground shatters as she breaks free from the crushing gravity spell. Engulfed in a fiery aura, she rockets into the sky, leaving her captor totally stunned. The potion is transforming her, supercharging her power at the cost of her own life force. Brian smirks, recognizing the magic-boosting serum and admitting her tricks are pretty clever. With a wild grin, Rostana unleashes a devastating blast of fire, pouring every last bit of her borrowed power into the attack. Completely unfazed, the upperclassman instantly throws up a massive force field to defend himself. Her attack slams right into the shield, resulting in a colossal explosion that rocks the whole forest. As the smoke clears, a panting Rostana wonders if her all-or-nothing assault was enough to take him down, but a glowing fist smashes right through the smoke, effortlessly blocking her follow-up strike. Brian easily overpowers the catgirl, grabbing her by the head and putting a stop to her rampage. He reveals his force magic can be layered, getting exponentially stronger every time he used it. Now, with his power totally cranked up, he blasts the exhausted catgirl off her feet with a single, savage hit. The upperclassman stands there, victorious, his face spattered with the grim proof of his total domination. Brian sneers in disgust, pissed that her filth actually got on him. But emerging from the smoke, the Demon King is watching the senior's little victory monologue. Belmont stares down at the empty potion bottle, a dark look creeping onto his face. The senior's cruel taunts have finally gotten under the Demon King's skin. Brian keeps mocking the defeated catgirl, about to play his final ace. A brand new power starts crackling from his hand, signaling a completely different type of magic. He conjures a massive illusion of Alice, using her to mess with Rostana's head. Rostana can only gape in disbelief, whispering the hero's heiress's name. The upperclassman then reveals his true target, vowing to take Alice out after he's finished here. But even on the ground, Rostana roars back, desperately trying to pull his attention away from her friend. Brian laughs at her for dreaming of friendship with humans, calling her nothing but an animal. He then gets ready to end it with his devastating three-layer punch. But just as he's about to land the final blow, his entire arm gets ripped clean off. The upperclassman can only let out a blood-curdling scream, staring at the stump where his arm used to be. That's when Belmont reveals the potion only brought back a tiny sliver of his real power. Both the attacker and his victim are left completely floored by this insane turn of events. Belmont then lectures the cat girl, declaring that his own ruthless way is the only way to truly settle a conflict. As a demonic mask materializes over his face, he promises a grim end for anyone who gets in his way. A flashback suddenly takes us to Brian's past, starting with the absolute hatred he had for his own father. His dad's fear of other races began after getting completely crushed in the war against the demons. The father dealt with his trauma by beating his own twisted fears into his children through grueling, brutal training. He would tear into a young Brian for his unstable powers, calling him a worthless piece of garbage. His father's lessons were fueled by pure paranoia, constantly asking if his sons wanted to get wiped out by the other clans. He screamed at them to never forget the overwhelming power of the demonic clan above all others. From that day forward, Brian swore he would never sink to the level of his pathetic, cowardly old man. Snapping back to the present, the upperclassman vows that no one from another clan will ever surpass him. Rostana stares in utter shock, wondering if this terrifying monster is the same little incubus she knew. The catgirl flinches as the fully transformed Demon King locks his terrifying gaze on her, but Brian just laughs it off, mocking Belmont for getting cocky after one lucky sneak attack. The Demon King completely ignores him, instead demanding that he first apologize to Rostana for disrespecting her clan. Brian scoffs at the idea, refusing to apologize to someone he sees as trash. The Demon King coolly retorts that it's because Brian is the real trash. Belmont clarifies that he was just trying to give the senior a more dignified end. Enraged, Brian unleashes his power, ready to show this demon what true strength is all about. Rostana recognizes his advanced spell stacking, a technique that's way beyond a first-year student's capabilities. He reveals the secret to his power, the creation of his very own demonic spirit. Layer after layer of complex magic circles materialize in the air, showcasing his immense power. With one final incantation, he prepares to summon his ultimate weapon from the abyss. A monstrous undead giant bursts from the ground, a terrifying display of his power. Rostana stares at the summoned creature, struck by its bizarre, almost sacred look, and watches in utter despair, convinced that no student could possibly defeat this kind of power. Meanwhile, Brian gloats, absolutely certain of his victory and his unmatched strength. He brags that every single punch from his colossus carries the force of 12 layers of magic. With a victorious roar, the senior commands his ultimate weapon to finish this fight for good. The colossal fist rockets toward the Demon King, poised to completely obliterate him, but Belmont brings the devastating attack to a dead stop with just one outstretched hand. The Demon King narrows his eyes, totally unfazed by this so-called ultimate attack. Brian's jaw hits the floor in pure disbelief, struggling to understand how his power was shut down so easily. Belmont, ever the teacher, starts a lecture explaining that demonic spirits are just a reflection of their summoner's desires. He reveals that the secret to beating it is as simple as finding the flow of its energy and cutting it off. Brian just scoffs, firing back that Belmont's understanding of demonic spirits is a complete joke. The Colossus's power starts to corrupt the Demon King, its dark energy leaking into him. Rostana looks on in absolute horror, realizing the spirit's influence is actually consuming Belmont. But completely unbothered, the Demon King just keeps on with his lesson, explaining that all magic is born from desire. He then reveals the ultimate countermove. To fight a demonic spirit, you have to summon one of your own. Brian flies into a rage, screaming that no demon can just create a spirit out of thin air without being destroyed by it. Just then, the dark energy completely swallows the Demon King, making it look like Brian was right. Brian starts gloating, thinking he's won, as a vision of the cowardly father he hates appears before him. He swears with everything he has that he'll never be weak and scared like his old man. But then, from inside the darkness, Belmont's eyes begin to glow. He's finally figured out the fear that's been driving Brian's hatred. Seeing this, Brian starts to panic, feeling an immense demonic power, but he can't see a thing. The Colossus's giant hand jerks back as if it's been burned, pulling away from the Demon King. Belmont reveals that he's experienced countless desires, everything from the noblest sense of justice to the most tragic pasts. But he declares that in the end, all desire leads to the exact same thing, unending suffering. The senior is left completely stunned, realizing that Belmont somehow managed to reflect all that corrosive energy. Belmont explains that his own spirit will return every bit of pain it's been given, and then some. He coolly admits that his summoning started the exact moment Brian's attack made contact. Brian's face contorts in sheer terror as he finally gets the horrifying truth. With one last command, the Demon King summons his own ultimate weapon. A monstrous, three-headed serpent bursts from his back, and he gives it the legendary name, Cain. The undead Colossus is immediately overwhelmed, trapped within the jaws of the demonic serpent. Cain's three heads squeeze with absolute brutal force, completely shattering the senior's ultimate weapon. Belmont's spirit then expands, twisting and merging as it utterly devours the Colossus. Brian stumbles backward in pure terror. All his earlier confidence gone, replaced by desperate pleas. His own demonic spirit then turns against him, taking the form of his abusive and terrifying father. That's when Belmont reveals Cain's law. All the pain you inflict will be returned to you 7 times over. The phantom of his father raises its weapon, forcing Brian to relive his deepest trauma. All he can do is scream in agony as his own hatred is turned back on him. Their clashing wills erupt in a cataclysmic explosion that rips through the forest, but as the dust begins to settle, a mysterious figure emerges onto the battlefield. Meanwhile, a student frantically reports the massive energy spike to the student council president. Intrigued by the news, the president decides it's time to pay a personal visit to their new troublemaker. The battle's aftermath has carved a massive, smoking scar across the forest where a defeated Brian sits, surrounded by the destruction, muttering curses about his humiliating defeat. But Belmont's rage is far from over, as he demands to know who dared to interrupt his final blow. A wounded Rostana struggles to hold him back, asking if he's finally gotten this little rampage out of his system. She coolly advises the little incubus to take a deep breath before he does something monumentally stupid, reminding him that starting brawls here is like declaring war on the entire academy. Belmont grudgingly admits she's right, but his mind flashes back to every last human who ever pushed him too far. Meanwhile, Brian staggers to his feet, his entire worldview shattered by the demon's unbelievable power, and decides to make one final, desperate stand, screaming at the demon to stop looking down on him. But the Demon King has no time for such pathetic pleas and unleashes one last, devastating blow. The attack completely shreds the upperclassman's clothes, leaving him exposed and utterly humiliated. Belmont looms over the defeated senior, deciding that a little public humiliation is a perfectly fitting punishment. Rostana can't resist making a snarky comment about the unconscious upperclassman's unimpressive physique before turning her attention back to Belmont, ready to get back to business, but he seems completely zoned out. Without warning, the Demon King suddenly tackles her to the ground, his demonic energy still surging wildly. The flustered catgirl protests, completely caught off guard by his aggressive advance, but Belmont just groans in pain, obviously struggling with something intense. As Rostana cautiously checks on him, he reveals that the dragon's saliva has a pretty nasty side effect, and he needs to release all this built-up power right now. He declares that the only way to counteract the potion's effects is through the cultivation of yin and yang. A beet red Rostana asks just how she's supposed to help with his urgent problem. The Demon King leans in close, his demonic form casting a shadow over her as he whispers his command, but instead of what she's expecting, he just grabs her face and starts yanking on her cheek. He continues this bizarre face-stretching experiment, leaving Rostana completely and utterly bewildered. The catgirl frantically swats at his hands, demanding that he cut out his weird antics this instant. Belmont mutters to himself, wondering why the cultivation isn't working, recalling his other failed attempts with Lehi and Alice. Just then, the unstable energy surges again, making the Demon King cry out in agony. Seeing this, Rostana's concern deepens, and she asks if he's okay, since he's clearly getting worse. And then, suddenly, the catgirl has a realization. She figures out exactly what an incubus needs to release excess energy. Blushing furiously, Rostana offers to help the Demon King with his suffering. But Belmont's demonic form doesn't even move, completely ignoring her bold proposition. Instead, his unstable energy suddenly erupts outwards, proving his condition is way more serious than she thought. Through the pain, Belmont decides he has to find Alice, leaving a very offended Rostana fuming in his dust. But whatever comeback she had is cut short by the arrival of a powerful new presence. The newcomer immediately scolds the demon for daring to speak Alice's name so casually. Rostana is completely floored, paralyzed by the newcomer's tremendous and intimidating aura. From the ground, the defeated Brian recognizes their visitor, the one and only legendary student council president, Adonis. He gazes upon the absolute mess with pure disgust, muttering about how disgraceful the whole thing is. A completely terrified and humiliated Brian can barely choke out a pathetic apology to his boss. Shockingly, Adonis seems to comfort the defeated Brian, saying he did his best, but that gentle tone is just a mask for a much darker accusation. He calls Brian out for using his secretary's sister as leverage, a move that was completely off the books. With an ice-cold glare, Adonis warns the disgraced man to get ready for what's coming to him. All Brian can do is scream in terror as the weight of his mistake crushes him, and the president unleashes a devastating blast, dishing out his own brand of swift justice. Belmont and Rostana are left completely stunned, witnessing the council's absolute power firsthand. With his subordinate dealt with, Adonis and his secretary finally turn their attention to the troublemakers who are still standing. Belmont grits his teeth, unable to get a read on the president's power at all, while the energy from the potion starts to rage out of control. Adonis just smirks, commenting that it's a real shame the demon is about to be consumed by his own power before the real fun can even start. The president then drops a bombshell, exposing Rostana as a spy and offering her one chance to just walk away. The Demon King is completely floored by this shocking revelation, but Rostana isn't backing down an inch, declaring that her loyalty now belongs to the Demon King. Filled with a new sense of purpose, she swears to protect Belmont from the president's fury, As she does, his own demonic power flares, allowing him to sense the real emotions behind her courageous stand. A flashback shows us her deep-seated hatred for humans and their never-ending conquests. At last, she admits the truth. She was a spy, and her mission was to get close to Alice. Her memories flash back to a shadowy clan leader who gave her this dangerous assignment. But spending time with Alice wasn't at all what she expected, and it planted a seed of doubt in her mind. The hero's heir's simple kindness started to melt the spy's hardened heart. She remembers the simple happiness of just sharing a dessert with the hero's heir. All their playful banter and shared moments began to blur the lines of her mission. Rostana admits her orders started to get confusing, but one thing became clear: Alice was not the enemy. She even realized that Alice's constant rants about Belmont were just proof of how much he'd brighten up her world. The cat girl playfully calls out her friend for her classic tsundere behavior, but a pouting Alice just feels betrayed, completely missing the truth in her friend's words. Rostana's sly smile hides the pain of her own lies. Back in the present, she declares that she might have failed as a friend, but she refuses to fail as a protector. The president, however, is completely unimpressed, watching her defiant stand with cold amusement. But then Belmont suddenly grabs her, his own chaotic power surging out of control. In response, Rostana shoves the Demon King away, yelling at him to escape and find Alice. Belmont looks back, totally stunned by her sudden, selfless sacrifice. With a tearful smile, she asks him to tell the hero's heir she's sorry. She truly believes he's the only one who can make her best friend happy. The cat girl then turns to face the president, ready for her final stand. But just then, Belmont lands coolly beside her, agreeing that it's time for them to fight together. A furious Rostana yells that he just made her cry for nothing. The Demon King just scoffs, boasting he can take down the president in just 3 moves. She grabs him, insisting that he's in no shape to fight, not while his power is this unstable. Adonis catches the demon's brazen claim, a smirk touching his lips at such incredible arrogance. The president then unleashes a massive, unseen spell, leaving Rostana completely shell-shocked. A closer look reveals the attack's intricate and fiery core, a true testament to its immense power. Adonis's calm, confident gaze meets Rostana's look of pure terror. But Belmont immediately counters with his own golden blades, clashing with the president's power head-on. The president's secretary is left speechless, having never witnessed anyone block his attacks before. Adonis reveals the secret behind his unique magic. He manipulates time to cast instantaneous and unavoidable spells. Belmont just smirks, claiming he simply did the same thing to create a basic shield. The president is completely floored, wondering how the demon saw through a technique that took him years to perfect. But suddenly, Belmont cries out in pain as the potion's side effects take their toll. Rostana watches in absolute horror as the unstable energy completely consumes his entire arm. Adonis reveals that every spell Belmont casts just speeds up his own demise. The president then summons a massive spirit dragon, warning that raising another shield will be his final act. With a cold stare, Adonis promises the demon's own magic will devour him from the inside out. Belmont quickly grabs Rostana, preparing to teleport them both away from the overwhelming onslaught. But the Demon King's shield is buckling, struggling to hold back the president's immense power. Rostana grabs onto him, begging him to stop before his magic consumes him completely. He snarls back that her interference will only get her instantly obliterated. With tears streaming down her face, she screams that she doesn't even care if she dies. The Demon King coldly asks if she's actually wishing for death. She struggles in his grasp, declaring that a traitor like her deserves exactly that. Belmont realizes his yin and yang magic is responding to her powerful emotions. He recalls how it reacted to Lei's hope for the revival of their clan, and with Alice, it was her sheer desperation combined with his desire to protect her that triggered it. The Demon King demands to know Rostana's deepest, most genuine wish. Overwhelmed by his question, the cat girl can only stammer in response. Her mind flashes back to a simple, happy moment she shared with her best friend. With tears in her eyes, she finally confesses her desire to live and apologize to Alice. The Demon King's glowing eyes narrow as he promises to make her wish come true. He leans in, initiating the cultivation of yin and yang in a completely unexpected way. A colossal burst of golden energy erupts from them, engulfing the entire battlefield. Adonis is left sprawled on the ground, absolutely stunned, wondering how his ultimate attack was so easily nullified. As the light fades, Belmont stands there completely unharmed, holding a sleeping Rostana in his arms. The Demon King then declares that his plan is nearly complete. With only one final step remaining, he reveals his 3-part strategy. See through the attack, neutralize its power, and now, finish the fight. But the president rises to his feet. A look of dawning realization spreads across his face as Adonis correctly identifies the legendary secret art, the cultivation of yin and yang. His secretary is completely floored, unable to believe the forbidden magic actually exists. The president explains that the technique works by fusing 2 souls, unleashing an unimaginable burst of raw power. Adonis scoffs that some ancient magic won't save him, but Belmont simply tells him that's where he's wrong. As Rostana awakens, they prepare to deliver the final blow. The Demon King holds his partner, ready to end this in a single strike. His eyes locked on his final opponent. Adonis just scoffs, totally convinced that after a whole 50 years, nobody out there could even touch his level of power. The president gears up to unleash another devastating attack to call the demon's bluff and finish this. But just as he does, right behind Belmont, a massive portal suddenly materializes, marking the end of the training session. Without a second thought, the Demon King just spins around and dives straight into the portal, leaving the president just standing there, completely floored. The secretary points out that the portal was on a timer, meaning Belmont's big move was nothing more than a perfectly timed getaway. The two of them pop back out on the training grounds, completely blowing the other students' minds with their sudden appearance. A panicked Lester and his posse immediately scramble to their big bro's side. The loyal noble explains that they felt that insane clash of power and seriously thought the worst had happened, but his worry instantly morphs into pure shock the second he recognizes the cat girl cradled in his idol's arms. Belmont just casually admits, yeah, something happened, completely downplaying the absolutely epic battle they just had. Rostana remembers how she almost sacrificed herself, and her eyes are still brimming with emotion from the ordeal. Then it hits him, and the Demon King starts to panic, realizing he'd just been a total jerk to Alice, again, which leaves the entire crowd absolutely dumbfounded. Of course, Lester reads the whole situation completely wrong, thinking his idol has somehow ascended to godhood alongside his enemy. Without missing a beat, the loyal noble and his crew drop to their knees and start hailing Belmont as their new god. Just then, Belmont suddenly calls out to the catgirl, getting Rostana completely mixed up with the other catgirl. That's the cue for a furious Alice to storm onto the scene, her eyes practically shooting flames of righteous fury. And naturally, Lester's crew goes absolutely wild, shouting that a legendary love triangle has just been born. Meanwhile, a nervous Rostana is desperately trying to explain everything to her fuming best friend, but all of Alice's anger just melts away and is replaced by pure relief the moment she sees that Rostana is okay. Rostana explains that they felt the surge of demonic energy and came running, afraid that something terrible had happened. Then, with a tearful smile, she says she's just so happy her friend is unharmed. The two of them share a heartfelt hug, ready to put the whole terrifying ordeal behind them. Belmont, however, knows the real trouble is just getting started, because right on cue, Adonis steps through the portal, and the president's icy glare is a dead giveaway that this incident is far from over. The crowd starts whispering in awe as they recognize the legendary heir to the Roseth family. Alice wastes no time confronting him, demanding to know what on earth her brother is doing here. Suddenly, the all-powerful president gets completely flustered and can barely even stammer out his sister's name. A light blush starts to creep across his face, his cool and collected demeanor totally shattered. His secretary is forced to step in, reminding the president to pull it together and maintain his dignity. Adonis manages to regain his composure, just in time to drop an absolute bombshell on the entire academy. He reveals the demon brat's true identity, none other than the legendary 1,000-year-old Demon King, Belmont. This new information completely shatters Lester's mind. He just can't process his idol's unbelievable secret. Another student just scoffs, totally in disbelief, refusing to believe that the idiot with the dead fish eyes could possibly be a king. Rostana, on the other hand, just smirks, as all the pieces about the mysterious little incubus finally click into place. Through it all, Belmont remains completely unfazed, his bored expression not changing one bit. Alice turns back to her brother, demanding to know how any of this is possible, since their own ancestor was the one who sealed him away. The president explains that the stone seal was broken not too long ago, which allowed the Demon King to reawaken. He then totally puts Alice on the spot by suggesting that she's the one who should be explaining the real story. This catches even Belmont off guard as Alice takes a step forward, getting ready to face the entire crowd herself. Just then, a new challenger steps up, the confident and imposing Imperial Knight, M. The president dramatically announces she's the only one who witnessed the Demon King's return. He gets right in her face, demanding she confirm if Belmont is the guy who busted out of the stone seal. But Belmont just casually shuts it down, making the president scream in pure frustration. His whole grand accusation just went completely off the rails, leaving him totally speechless. The knight remembers seeing a 2-meter-tall mountain of muscle, not some scrawny pipsqueak. A panicking president starts second-guessing her own testimony, but she's absolutely positive Belmont isn't the one. Furious, he demands to know how in the world Belmont learned the forbidden arts if he's not the Demon King. With a completely straight face, Belmont calmly throws Alice right under the bus, causing the president's mind to absolutely shatter. This shocking bombshell literally freezes him solid in a block of ice, while a totally flustered Alice tries to deny everything. But Belmont coolly reminds her they first cultivated their yin and yang together, leaving the hero's heir blushing a deep crimson, totally speechless. She's completely unable to argue with his very public claim, and Adonis's brain completely short-circuits, making him mutter about his sister as he freezes solid. His secretary just wheels the frozen president away, vowing, "This humiliation will not be forgotten." Belmont breathes a sigh of relief, wondering if that knight was actually his subordinate, Lehi, in a clever disguise. He mentally praises Lehi's masterful disguise as he watches the real knight walk off, but then a familiar voice calls his name from right behind him. A new maid with tiny little horns pops up, complaining about what a pain it was to sneak into the academy. The Demon King is totally floored, instantly recognizing his loyal subordinate Lehi, who just flashes him a smile. She's impressed by her own handiwork and curious about the other demon's spectacular transformation magic, while Belmont's mind is racing. He's wondering who in the heck that knight could be if Lehi is right here. The mysterious knight, just shoots him a playful look, making the mystery of her true identity even deeper. 1 week later, the students are back in class, listening to a lecture on demonic spirits as Belmont reflects on his newfound power. He realizes the key is to grant his partner's deepest, truest wish, and a golden sigil glows on his hand, confirming the cultivation is restoring his demonic energy. He decides he has to master this cultivation technique before his true identity gets completely blown at the academy. But his scheming is cut short by an annoyed teacher, calling him out right in the middle of class. The teacher is fuming over Belmont's new entourage, who have basically set him up like a god on a throne. Belmont starts sweating bullets, realizing his new fan club is causing a super awkward scene, and the Demon King lets out a massive sigh. He is so over his followers' antics. Later at lunch, a confused Lester asks why his god-tier big bro still seems so unhappy. The Demon King's fiery reply of "it's not enough" completely terrifies his loyal crew, and he then turns to his loyal noble. He declares that his current power level is nowhere near what he needs, revealing his true ambition: to conquer the entire academy, not just the first years. The loyal noble gets super excited and shoves a flyer right in his idol's face, claiming he has the perfect plan. Lester reveals his brilliant idea. They'll kick off their conquest with the club recruitment day. The academy grounds are absolutely buzzing with activity for the annual club and society recruitment day. Nearby, the gardening club is making its pitch, staffed by a trio of very alluring, plant-like students. A bunch of high-energy beast girls are trying to recruit new members for their workout club, while Lester explains that rank is all about power. He then reveals a fast track for climbing the academy ladder. Lester spills the secret to getting strong, quick. Join a club and collect 3 heroic badges. The Demon King is totally clueless, asking what the heck a heroic badge even is. His loyal follower explains they are proof of your strength, earned through recognition from the school or upperclassmen. But as he's talking, Lester starts to tremble. Terrified, he's completely misjudged his idol's true ambitions. The fanboy launches into a full-blown panic attack. Worried he's gotten his big bro's goals all wrong, Belmont just pats his shoulder with a real smile, praising his loyal subordinate's efforts. The Demon King then realizes the clubs are co-ed, a golden opportunity for his cultivation plans. But as he strolls up to a group of girls, they immediately scramble away in fear. He gives it another shot, only for the girls to bolt once again, proving his reputation is causing him some serious problems. Lester overhears the insane rumors spreading about his idol and is totally thrilled by his big bro's new fame. Belmont's spirit, however, just shatters. He feels like a part of him just died inside. Elsewhere, Alice lets out a huge, powerful sneeze. The hero's heir can just feel that someone is talking about her, which leaves Rostana completely confused. Lester tries to cheer Belmont up, positive that the big shot clubs will be lining up to recruit him. His prediction comes true in the worst way imaginable when the wrestling club makes an extremely aggressive pitch. Their leader flexes hard, promising to show the Demon King what a real body is all about. Belmont gives his loyal follower a knowing glance, and Lester gets the message loud and clear. The Demon King makes a strategic retreat as his fan club bravely holds back the tidal wave of muscle. He realizes this whole chaotic scene is totally killing his chances with any potential cultivation partners. But his escape gets cut short when something unexpected catches his eye. He shouts a warning, but he's unable to stop his forward momentum. The inevitable crash is both loud and dramatic. His clumsy landing puts him in another one of those very familiar, compromising positions. Dazed from the collision, the Demon King asks if his landing pad is doing all right. The flustered girl confirms she's fine, despite their incredibly awkward introduction. Belmont's eyes widen as he senses something special about this new girl. She then reveals she's actually been searching for the Academy's infamous new demon student. The fencing club president, Felix, makes a surprisingly casual and formal invitation. Belmont is completely taken aback, asking her why she doesn't seem to hate his guts. She cheerfully explains her belief that every race deserves to be treated with respect, but their conversation is cut off by cruel whispers from other students. Belmont's eyes narrow as he senses her true nature, watching as a wing materializes from her back. He realizes she's a half-angel, a fact she has clearly been trying to hide. Felix sadly admits she's a mix of human and angel, calling herself a despicable existence. She tries to turn him away, telling him she's the only member of the fencing club, but the Demon King has already made up his mind, and he declares that he wants to join. He tells the stunned girl he's genuinely interested in fencing and completely rejects her self-pitying label. Internally, Belmont is celebrating like crazy, having found a new cultivation partner and escaped the wrestling club's grasp. Overwhelmed with emotion, Felix can't process that someone has finally joined her club. A laugh, full of relief and pure happiness, escapes her. With a huge grin, she declares it's time for the official club entrance exam. Meanwhile, Alice mutters to herself, wondering if that little incubus managed to find a club, all while acting like she couldn't care less. But then, Rostana's eagle eyes lock onto a familiar face in the crowd, and she immediately points him out. She starts teasing Alice, saying she basically summoned the guy just by talking about him. Back at the dueling grounds, Felix lays down the rules, a 3-round fight to prove he's got what it takes. Belmont agrees, but he's a little thrown off by the huge crowd that just materialized out of nowhere. The club president readies her stance, a determined blush coloring her cheeks. Then, without a single warning, she launches herself forward. She kicks off the test with a lightning-fast attack, but the Demon King's mystic eyes flash open, instantly breaking down her every move. The force from their first clash sends out a massive shockwave, throwing up a thick cloud of dust. Belmont barely dodges a slash that rips through the air with terrifying force. In fact, the raw power of her attack is so intense it activates his legendary absolute sight. A huge trench is gouged into the earth, a testament to the devastating power of her opening strike. Suddenly, Alice's voice cuts through the noise, yelling at the pervert to just give up already. She explains that Felix's club has no members because the girl can't tell friend from foe once a fight starts. Apparently, Felix inherited her legendary sword skills from her ancestor Arya. A flashback shows a different Demon King squaring off against a powerful female hero 50 years in the past. This hero, who looks exactly like Felix, gets asked about her unique brand of magic. She coolly replies that her sword is all she needs to take care of any demon. Back in the present, Belmont's eyes narrow in recognition of the legendary technique. He confirms that her sword style is an exact match for the legendary hero, Arya. Alice is fuming, screaming for the pervert to stand down, while Rostana just smirks, teasing her for being so worried. The club president lets out a sigh of defeat, all of her earlier confidence completely drained away. Felix tries to call off the test, admitting she gets a little too into her fights, but Belmont isn't having it and refuses to quit. He demands they start the second round right now. An enraged Alice calls him a complete dumbass, but Rostana holds her back, sensing he's got something up his sleeve. The Demon King thinks back to that split second when he dodged her incredibly powerful strike. He remembers seeing a truly genuine, happy smile on her face right in the middle of the fight. With that in mind, Belmont steps forward with a proposal. He asks for just one promise from her if he wins. Over on the sidelines, Alice and Rostana are watching closely, trying to figure out what he's really after. The Demon King makes a bold demand. If he wins, he gets her most precious possession. His demand leaves the club president flustered, blushing furiously, and totally at a loss for words. From the sidelines, Rostana just scoffs at the incubus's total lack of shame, but Alice's expression changes as she realizes that Bastard might have a completely different prize in mind. Sporting a determined blush, Felix agrees to his outrageous terms. The Demon King doesn't waste a second. He immediately activates his legendary absolute sight, and his vision reveals her secret. Her demonic power and her sword are fused into one. He figures it out if he tracks her energy. He can predict her every single move. The club president braces herself to unleash another devastating attack. Their second clash explodes with enough force to shatter the very ground they're standing on. He focuses. He tracks the surging flow of her demonic energy, and with flawless timing, the Demon King meets her world-ending attack head-on. But even Belmont is staggered by the raw power he barely managed to deflect. His mystic eyes show him that her attack wasn't just a simple sword strike. It was pure demonic power made manifest. Felix seizes the opening, her eyes glowing with an ominous blue light. She slams her blade down with enough force to completely pulverize the arena floor, sending both duelists flying back from the shockwave. A massive crater now marks where they stood. The club president can't help but be impressed by his unbelievable defensive prowess, but Belmont just casually thanks her, his glowing eye a dead giveaway that he's already seen right through her. His cryptic remark leaves the powerful swordswoman totally confused. Belmont then reveals that her last attack exposed her deepest, most hidden desire to him. Felix is floored, instantly recognizing the serpent coiled around his blade as a demonic spirit. The Demon King turns to his companion and asks Cain to spill all her secrets. We're then shown a flashback, explaining the harsh prejudice against mixed bloods in a world obsessed with racial purity. From the time she was a little girl, Felix was treated like an outcast because of her mixed heritage. Even her own mother's bitter words taught her to live with her head hung in shame, and she was endlessly tormented just for daring to learn the sacred sword style of her clan. She endured all the suffering, truly believing she was a worthless and despicable person. Her mother's deathbed apology only made her feelings of worthlessness even worse, and after her mother's tragic passing, Felix was convinced she was doomed to a life of misery. But that miserable existence came to an end the day a legendary hero offered to take her on as a disciple. The hero completely ignored the protests, declaring that she only cared about a person's potential, not their bloodline. A tearful Felix tried to turn down the offer, convinced that her mixed heritage would only bring shame upon her new master. But instead of arguing with her, the hero simply tossed a pair of swords right into her hands. As she gripped the new blades, the young girl's trial had officially begun. The legendary swordswoman effortlessly parried her clumsy attacks, putting the girl's true spirit to the test. And for the very first time, a genuine smile lit up Felix's face as she finally found her purpose. Her master taught her that once swords are drawn, things like status and race become completely meaningless. The feeling of that very first duel was something she would cherish for the rest of her life, and it was through her master's sword that Felix finally understood that on the battlefield, everyone is equal. Back in the present, Kane finishes its report, whispering Felix's deepest secrets directly into the Demon King's ear. Belmont suddenly recalls his last encounter with her master, a full 30 years ago, and he can't help but wonder if this was all part of her grand scheme. Felix, meanwhile, is impressed, remarking how incredible it is for a first year to have already summoned a demonic spirit. With the warm-up officially over, she declares that it's time to unleash her true power for the final round. A panicked Alice screams at the weirdo to just give up, warning him that this is a fight he absolutely cannot win. But Belmont's glowing eyes see right through the whole display. Recognizing the legendary power radiating from her, he instantly identifies her ultimate technique, the fabled wings of light. Felix explains that her wings are actually countless afterimages of her sword, and she challenges him to find the one true blade among them. Completely unfazed by the impossible challenge, the Demon King coolly tells her to bring it on. The angelic swordswoman then dives down from the heavens, poised to deliver the final, decisive blow. As Felix plummets towards him, she wonders if Belmont could be the one her master prophesied about. But the Demon King's mystic eye has a completely different scenario in mind. He decides this is the perfect chance to kickstart his own cultivation technique. A flashback takes us to the moment her master passed down the legendary Wings of Light technique. Her master explained that if anyone could ever break through this move, they would become a greater teacher than she herself could ever be. Felix now wonders if the Demon Lord before her is that very person. She unleashes a blinding storm of light, an attack that looks utterly inescapable. The Demon King is completely engulfed by the deadly barrage, but Belmont just grips his sword, determined to comprehend the will powering her blade. He declares his only goal is to understand the true intent hidden within her swordplay. In a brilliant flash, Felix's strike sends his sword flying clean out of his hand. But her victory is cut short when she realizes he let go of his weapon on purpose. The Demon King reveals it was all a feint to exploit her obsession with crossing swords. With a cocky smirk, he admits he had no problem taking advantage of her predictable battle habits. The force of their collision sends a colossal shockwave tearing across the academy grounds. The crowd can only stare in awe at the sheer ferocity on display. From the sidelines, a furious Alice screams, calling him a total sicko. But the duel concludes with the two tangled up in yet another very compromising position on the ground. A stunned Felix demands to know how he could have possibly figured out her secret weakness. He points out that she's way too focused on the sword. Helping her up, he explains that the lesson of equality came from a person, not an object. The Demon King's face seems to merge with her master's as he declares that swords aren't the only things that can cross. With tears of joy, Felix finally welcomes him as a true equal, realizing he's the one her master spoke of. At that moment, Belmont's inner incubus awakens, seeing the absolute perfect opportunity for his unique cultivation technique. The flustered club president quickly reminds him of his promise, and he agrees that it's time to collect his prize. He puckers up, ready to seal the deal with a single, powerful move. But a fuming Alice interrupts, yelling for senior brother Felix to get up that instant. The term senior brother throws Belmont for a complete loop, causing him to question Felix's real identity. He immediately activates his absolute sight, switching to his special mode for a much closer inspection. That's when the angelic sword master reveals a shocking secret, asking for his guidance as a junior brother. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Demon King's brain completely short-circuits. His legendary composure remains shattered for 2 whole days. Back in class, Belmont is just a petrified husk, looking as if his soul has completely left his body. His loyal crew, now members of the wrestling club, worry that their big bro has finally been broken. Meanwhile, a concerned Alice peeks into the classroom, looking for that jerk. The Demon King is suddenly snapped out of his daze by a familiar voice. Lester bursts through the door, announcing the arrival of his 2 sisters-in-law, which makes Alice absolutely furious. But the sight of the girls triggers a sudden, life-changing realization for the Demon King. Rostana smirks at the little incubus while Alice tries to act like she isn't worried at all. The Demon King suddenly springs back to life, declaring this is precisely the motivation he needed. However, his recovery is immediately cut short by a cheerful greeting from his new junior brother, Felix. The sheer psychological trauma sends Belmont reeling, to the absolute horror of his fan club. Felix reveals she's just here to fulfill the promise they made during their duel, and presents him with a gleaming golden crest, his official prize for winning the match. It's a hero's badge, her most prized possession, which she believes he has rightfully earned. But Alice just scoffs, declaring she'll be the first one to collect all 3 badges, not him. To prove it, she and Rostana have joined the fencing club to challenge him head-on. The hero's heir immediately regrets her decision, blaming Rostana for dragging her into this whole mess. But a quick glance away reveals her competitive act is just a cover for how she really feels. A totally flustered Alice demands the Demon King join her in the advanced class next year. Belmont is still reeling, questioning the very idea of being in a class with her. As Alice storms off, Rostana teases her for biting her tongue during her Sunder rage. Lester explains that the advanced second-year classes are co-ed, a fact that changes absolutely everything. The Demon King's eyes glow with a new sense of purpose, demanding to join the hero's celebration day. His loyal noble friend promises to pull some strings with his family's influence to get them both approved for the event. But the next day, Lester's application gets approved while Belmont's is stamped with a big fat denied. Lester is completely floored, realizing that even his family's powerful name wasn't enough to get his idol in. Belmont calmly notes that only one teacher would have the nerve to reject him and asks for a name. The culprit is quickly revealed. A teacher named Aphrodite is the only obstacle standing in his way. Lester warns that Aphrodite's family is famous for its berserker bloodline and is related to the president. Another student confirms Aphrodite's stubborn streak, noting her issue isn't with demons in general, but with Belmont himself. Completely unfazed, the Demon King decides to handle this little problem personally. But before he can even knock, the door swings open with a sudden creak. He's greeted by the very teacher he was looking for, who seems to have been expecting him. The two stand face to face in a surprisingly awkward showdown. Belmont tries to play it cool, claiming it's just a coincidence he was there, but the flustered teacher seems to have a completely different read on the situation. Her epic misunderstanding results in a massive explosion that rocks the entire academy. Aphrodite storms into the dean's office, declaring that Belmont's behavior proves he's an uncontrollable menace. Aphrodite lectures the dean about self-control, but Lester thinks she's the one who needs a lesson. Belmont tries to explain his actions to a horrified teacher, claiming it was all just a cultural misunderstanding. The head of discipline, Teacher Klein, glares daggers at him, demanding to know just how many misunderstandings he's had. Lester quickly slaps a hand over Belmont's mouth, warning him to stop digging his own grave. He whispers Aphrodite's terrifying nicknames, revealing her reputation as a cold-blooded torturer. But Aphrodite's sharp ears catch every single word, and she whips around to give them a furious glare. The dean calmly considers the situation, suspecting the whole thing might have just been an accident. But Aphrodite isn't having any of it, demanding the dean send Belmont to the disciplinary room for some personal punishment. Lester's mind flashes to a terrifying image, realizing the disciplinary room is the stuff of legends. The dean just smirks, agreeing that a little discipline might be exactly what the situation calls for. And so, the Demon King is dragged off to the Academy's infamous and torchlit disciplinary room. The walls are decked out with a pretty serious collection of disciplinary gear. Obviously, this is a room where they don't mess around with the rules. But Belmont, he's not impressed in the slightest, figuring the teacher knows a thing or two about the art of restraint. But in a wild twist, it's the Demon King himself who suddenly found himself in chains. Aphrodite steps up, demanding the Demon King spill the beans on all his supposed crimes. Naturally, our Demon King plays dumb, insisting he has no clue what she's even talking about. She then angrily rattles off a list of his little chats with Alice, Rostana, and Felix, labeling him a total out-of-control incubus. But then, the interrogation gets super weird when she starts demanding every single juicy detail of his encounters. Belmont is completely thrown for a loop, wondering why this berserker is so obsessed with his special cultivation techniques. The Demon King just puffs out his chest and declares that everything he did was totally honorable and under his complete control. Meanwhile, his number one fanboy, Lester, is just eating it up, thinking his big bro's twisted logic is the most awesome thing he's ever heard. Not buying it for a second, Aphrodite summons her energy whip, totally over his excuses. With just one crack, she sends the Demon King sprawling. But instead of feeling pain, Belmont picks up on a strange demonic energy coming from her weapon. Now the teacher's curiosity is officially piqued, and she demands to know what he just figured out. So, he makes a simple request. Hit him one more time so he can get a better read on her power. An enraged Aphrodite completely misinterprets the situation, screaming that he's a sicko who's trying to look down on her. Outside, a heartbroken Lester is blaming himself for his hero's so-called humiliation. But back in the room, the Demon King fires up his mystic eyes, ready to expose the teacher's big secret. He starts breaking down the whip's energy, discovering a cold demonic magic that's hiding a core of intense heat. As he blocks the next strike, he realizes the red glow is all the pent-up desire she's been bottling up. Belmont figures it out. Her berserker bloodline makes her use these interrogations as an excuse to let her true self out. With a devilish grin, he unleashes his own power, turning her very own weapon back on her. A shocked Aphrodite can only watch in horror as her whip suddenly turns on her. The rogue weapon starts to wrap around her, totally ignoring her desperate commands. She cries out as the whip's grip gets tighter, leaving her completely at its mercy. Belmont remembers a page from an old manual that describes a very particular kind of release technique. Meanwhile, the whip's tendrils keep doing their thing, leaving the teacher completely breathless. Overcome by a feeling she's never experienced, Aphrodite has no idea what's even happening to her. Outside, a miserable Lester can only listen in, completely convinced his hero is meeting a terrible end. 20 minutes later, it's Aphrodite who's a mess on the floor, demanding to know what in the world he just did to her. Unable to take it anymore, the loyal fanboy bursts through the door, expecting the absolute worst. Instead, he He finds his big bro looking cool as a cucumber, while a flustered Aphrodite desperately tries to pull herself together. Lester's imagination immediately runs wild, certain that his hero has just added another powerful clan to his list of conquests. Once the session is over, a blushing Aphrodite announces she's approving his application after all. Her announcement makes his loyal fanboy explode with joy, absolutely thrilled that his big bro got exactly what he came for. The Demon King, however, is a little suspicious, wondering what made her suddenly change her mind. Aphrodite, still fuming, silently vows to get her payback for this embarrassment during the upcoming celebration. And with that whole disciplinary mess finally wrapped up, the story shifts back to the classroom. Lester breaks down the details of Heroes Celebration Day, an ultra-exclusive event dedicated to honoring the Academy's past legends. The event is usually just for second years, where students form four-person squads to take on a series of challenges. Round 1 is a historical reenactment, pitting students against a teacher dressed up as a demon. The second round is all about honoring fallen heroes, a solemn tribute to those who paid the ultimate price. Students have to enter a palace of statues and answer a question made specifically for them. But if they get it wrong, the bronze statue springs to life, forcing the student into a pop quiz duel to pass. The third round is a complete mystery, and a freaked-out Lester asks his big bro how they're supposed to prep for the insane battle ahead. But the loyal noble is completely sidetracked by a book, baffled by a bizarre entry he just can't figure out. In another part of town, the mysterious knight M confirms to a cloaked figure that Belmont has joined the celebration. The shadowy figure sees this as a golden opportunity, cryptically telling the knight to make her move when the time is right. The knight accepts her mission, her entire body crackling with a strange, otherworldly power. The hooded figure then reveals their true objective: to eliminate the Demon King and absorb his power for themselves. The Hero Festival begins, and Lester is shivering in awe before the massive statues of legendary heroes. He totally misreads Belmont's reaction, assuming his idol is also just overwhelmed by the sacred occasion. But the Demon King is actually weeping tears of joy, which leaves his biggest fan completely dumbfounded. Belmont is just counting the girls, realizing this is his golden ticket to mastering his cultivation technique. Lester is totally stunned, thinking his big bro is already sizing up the strength of his future opponents. A teacher officially kicks off the festival, giving students the green light to form their teams for the challenges to come. The Demon King confidently struts forward, with his eyes set on one prize, teaming up with the ladies. But his path is immediately cut off by the massive flexing dudes from the wrestling club. Belmont is completely swamped by their aggressive recruitment pitch. The club's leader gives him a friendly invitation that feels a whole lot more like a threat. He's unceremoniously dragged off to join their muscle-bound clubhouse. But then, a new challenger appears, a fiery cat girl, who demands they let him go. With a cocky smirk, she declares that the Demon King is coming with her. The wrestler reluctantly hands him over, grumbling about her special descendant privilege. The new cat girl's commanding presence instantly turns heads. She pulls him close, smugly announcing that he's now officially on her team. Their little show earns a sharp scolding from a pink-haired girl who tells them to show some class. The cat girl just coolly brushes her off, telling the newcomer to mind her own beeswax. The cat girl then calls out her rival's lame excuse for wanting to team up with the little incubus. Belmont is perfectly happy with this new development, as his cultivation plans specifically require female partners. With just one spot left on their team, the cat girl wonders who will fill out their roster. That's when a mysterious elf appears, calmly declaring she wants to be on Belmont's team. The girls immediately start bickering over who called dibs, while Belmont's only question is about the elf's gender. He still remembers his recent screw-up with Felix, so the Demon King knows he has to play it safe this time. The elf simply confirms she's a girl, putting the Demon King's #1 concern to rest. Belmont flashes an enthusiastic thumbs up, which immediately gets him a fiery earful from his pink-haired admirer. The cat girl can't help but find it weird that a famously stuck-up elf would actually agree to work with a demon, but the elf just coolly brushes it off, saying her choice doesn't matter since she alone is enough to guarantee their win. The pink-haired girl just scoffs at that crazy level of arrogance, demanding to know who's really in charge here. Meanwhile, a blubbering Lester is just happy his big bro finally has a whole harem to keep him safe. The loyal guy gets dragged off by the wrestling club, tearfully accepting his fate like a true champ. With that sorted, Belmont's new squad dives into their first challenge, the Dragon's Dungeon hidden right under the academy. They end up in a round room with 4 identical hallways, leaving them stumped on which way to go. That's when a weird carving on the wall catches Belmont's eye, showing some ancient battle. The pink-haired girl immediately pipes up, recognizing it as the legendary Battle of Demacy. Apparently, it was a brutal 10-day war where a coalition of different races got absolutely wrecked, suffering massive losses. They only managed to win by paying a huge price, the sacrifice of 2 legendary holy heroes. Just then, a magical message materializes, spelling out their mission: choose a path and take the fortress. Belmont instantly figures out the 4 paths are a trick to split them up. The elf, totally unfazed, just picks her path and casually says goodbye to Belle. Naturally, the pink-haired girl completely loses it, blowing a gasket over the elf already using his first name. The cat girl just rolls her eyes at the drama and yanks her rival away, ready to get on with the challenge. But the pink-haired admirer whips back around, ordering Belmont to make sure he stays alive until they meet again. The Demon King just gives a simple nod, his face giving nothing away. Meanwhile, high up in a tower, a shadowy figure senses their arrival beneath the light of the full moon. This mysterious enemy cooks up a nasty welcome present in the form of a molten orb. Completely oblivious to the trap, Belmont heads down a dark, torchlit hallway all by himself. Suddenly, he's stopped in his tracks by a familiar tune, a long-forgotten demon nursery rhyme. The Demon King whips around, his senses going haywire from the nostalgic sound. A shadowy mass begins to take shape at the far end of the hall, blocking his way. As the darkness fades, it reveals a horde of his legendary demon guards, all cloaked in flames. But instead of feeling scared, Belmont's eyes light up with pure, nostalgic joy. He throws his arms open wide, totally ready for a huge reunion with his long-lost soldiers. Yeah, his welcome party has other ideas, charging straight at him with a single, murderous command. It suddenly dawns on Belmont that this is just a school event, and these are nothing but puppets. Super annoyed by the fakes, he powers up, planning to get this over with quickly. But his magic has a totally unexpected effect on the demonic puppets, leaving the Demon King completely baffled. He's left wondering when in the world his old guards got such a massive upgrade. Shaking it off, he starts charging up his demonic energy, feeling confident he's got more than enough juice to handle a bunch of puppets. The Demon King then unleashes a devastating wave of power to clear his path. At the exact same time, the pink-haired girl finds herself surrounded by her own menacing horde. But instead of being afraid, she's absolutely thrilled by how realistic the whole battle feels. The cat girl just smirks, totally unimpressed by what she thinks is just a simple show. The elf, however, senses there's something more to it, realizing this festival wouldn't be legendary if it was all just for show. All four warriors are totally fired up, ready to prove their strength in the hero festival. Back in his hallway, Belmont stands triumphant over a mountain of defeated clones, noting that while they're just puppets, the Academy at least nailed the proportions. But just then, a colossal burst of energy explodes from down the hall, announcing the arrival of a brand new challenger. In a flash, the Demon King is warped to a bizarre, torchlit cavern. He steps out into a fiery hellscape, instantly recognizing it as the infamous St. Guard volcano. A magic notification pops up, confirming his team cleared the first trial and is free to move on. But the shady Knight M appears, smugly informing Belmont that the real test is just getting started. Suddenly, a crazed laugh echoes from the volcano, powerful enough to make the ground itself tremble, and Belmont glances up. He wonders if the legendary flame demon could be making all that noise, just as a gigantic figure made of pure magma starts to rise from the molten crater. The legendary demon is revealed to be a female golem made of fire, who asks if he's the one who dared to challenge her. Belmont is totally thrown for a loop, trying to figure out when the terrifying flame demon turned into a girl with such an adorable face. M cackles, revealing her brilliant strategy to mess with the degenerate. She's transformed all of his opponents into bombshells. The knight immediately starts to freak out, realizing her spell came with a very prominent side effect on the puppets as the flame demon's new form is fully revealed, and it's a sight no one was prepared for. The pink-haired girl begins to fret, wondering if this is what Belle will look like when she grows up. Her catgirl rival, on the other hand, isn't worried, she's just absolutely furious at what she's seeing. She can't process the fact that a guy is somehow more well-endowed than she is, and her pride takes a critical hit. Elf, however, just calmly speculates that this must be how demons store their vast reserves of power, right before the flame demon Garfield makes his grand entrance. He lands with a thud right in front of the Demon King and issues a textbook challenge, roaring that Belmont has to defeat him to pass. Belmont instantly recognizes the speech he taught it to his old subordinate himself, but hearing it now is incredibly distracting, to say the least, as Garfield lays down the terms. Yeah, the threats just don't hit the same coming from this new, curvy body, and the Demon King is racking his brain. He's positive he's heard that cringy line somewhere before. Meanwhile, M is having a complete meltdown, realizing she accidentally projected her own embarrassing thoughts right into the puppet's head. With a roar, the flame demon unleashes its ultimate attack, the legendary Rage of St. Guard. Massive pillars of fire shoot up from the earth, boxing Belmont into what looks like an inescapable furnace, but he just calmly identifies the technique. He knows full well that nobody is supposed to walk away from those scorching flames, but that's when the mysterious elf shows up. She casually waves her hand, completely scattering the attack with her overwhelming magic, leaving the flame demon speechless as its ultimate move gets blown out like a birthday candle. A massive gust of wind rips right through the golem, completely snuffing out its fiery essence. With a single flick, the elf sends the demon soaring, calling the entire fight a total bore. Left standing in the wreckage, Belmont can only crack a smile. He remarks that things are finally starting to heat up, just as his system message offers him some help from his teammate, but he's not having it. He arrogantly rejects the offer, positive he can take down a simple puppet all by himself. The Demon King remembers a key weakness. Flame demons rapidly burn through their own magical reserves, so he throws up a defensive shield. His plan is simple. Just turtle up and outlast the fiery golem until it runs out of juice, then make his move. But his barrier is instantly obliterated, as the flames turn out to be way more powerful than he ever imagined. Belmont finally gets it. He's been played for a fool. A professor has been juicing up this puppet with a bottomless well of power, all from the shadows. His real enemy reveals that this demon is beefier than the other three put together. The inferno balloons to an insane size, poised to swallow everything whole. The Demon King finds himself completely swallowed by the roaring ocean of flames. The fiery golem roars for our hero to get on his knees and beg to pass, but Belmont just scoffs, shooting back that he hasn't bowed to anyone in 1,000 years. Pissed off by his gutsy response, the puppet winds up for a finishing move. It smashes its fist right into the ground, unleashing a tidal wave of pure magma. The Demon King digs in, fighting like hell against the overpowering inferno. He knows his current power level won't hold out for long and figures there's a magical leash connecting it to the professor. With a fresh plan brewing, he fires up his legendary all-seeing eye to pinpoint the connection. His sight cuts right through to the puppet's core, revealing a magical receiver tucked away in its chest. Totally clueless that its secret is blown, the golem powers up one final, devastating attack. It rockets forward with unbelievable speed, ready to finish this fight for good. But the Demon King doesn't see a threat. He sees the perfect opening. He dives straight through the golem, shocking the fiery puppet with a clean shot right to its chest. The flame demon lets out a silent shriek of pure terror as Belmont plunges his hand deep inside its core. He lands gracefully, having just yanked out the puppet's entire power source. He gives the pulsating orb a good look, confirming it's the exact magical link he was after. With a confident smirk, the Demon King decides to slurp up all that stolen power for himself. Elsewhere, the nightmare starts to freak out as her own magical energy is suddenly siphoned away. She collapses, trembling on the ground, realizing he's sniffed out the magical connection and is flipping the script on her. Belmont clenches his fist, crushing the core, and shatters the link with a satisfying pop. Stripped of its juice, the flame demon makes one last, desperate lunge at the Demon King. Belmont's eyes go wide as he finally puts a face to the puppet's mysterious master. He lets out a scoff. He knows that without its battery, the golem is nothing but an empty husk. With a casual flick of his finger, the once mighty flame demon turns to dust. A magical seal appears, confirming his win and closing the book on this fiery trial. Back in her lair, the nightmare decides it's time to quit messing around and step in personally. Meanwhile, back at the entrance, the pink-haired girl is wondering aloud if Belmont has already been knocked out. But the cat girl sees right through her little performance, teasing her for being so obviously worried. She then asks why the girl didn't jump in to help, right as the elf shows back up. The pink-haired girl furiously denies it, insisting she's just focused on leveling up, but then the elf drops a total bombshell. She says if even one of them fails, the entire team gets disqualified. Then, the elf calmly admits she was just making it up to stir the pot, which totally sets off her pink-haired rival. Their bickering gets cut short by the sound of footsteps coming from the dark hallway. The cat girl gleefully glomps onto Belmont, teasing him that the girls were just about to throw down over him. Suddenly, a flash of sinister energy floods the chamber, signaling the beginning of the next trial. The elf starts telling the scandalous tale of the Demon King and his 108 female guardians. She reveals their next opponent is a perfect simulation of the legendary Lady of Fort Damus. Belmont looks genuinely baffled, asking if people seriously believe the Demon King was just some kind of creep. He goes on a wild rant about historical accuracy, leaving the cat girl completely dumbfounded. The series of loud clangs, every exit slams shut, trapping the team inside the chamber. The Demon King's eyes narrow, he can feel it, the real fight is about to begin. A mysterious figure lowers herself from the ceiling, announcing that she's been waiting for them. Belmont squints, recognizing the strangely familiar voice of a young girl. Their new opponent is revealed, a cheerful demon girl who welcomes them to Fort Damus. The Demon King is absolutely floored, recognizing the legendary guardian as his own personal maid, Lehi. The cat girl just scoffs, doubting some ordinary guardian could be that legendary. But a sharp insult from the elf instantly ignites a brawl between the two rivals. The Lehi puppet completely ignores their squabbling, her hands crackling with power as she throws down the gauntlet. In a flash, the chamber is suddenly swarming with dozens of glowing, identical clones of the guardian. The girls are stunned by the clone army, and one of them immediately blames the Demon King's notoriously wild past. Belmont just sweats bullets, totally embarrassed and unable to defend his already trashed reputation. The army of Lehi clones swarms the team, attacking with shocking speed and perfect coordination. The cat girl dives into the chaos, refusing to get knocked out this early in the festival. Her pink-haired rival feels the exact same way, unleashing a powerful attack of her own. Even the normally reserved elf jumps into the fight, warning the others to stay out of her way. Then the pink-haired girl notices Belmont is just standing there, completely ignoring the battle raging around him. He's busy counting the clones, which sends his admirer into an absolute rage. Suddenly, the Demon King realizes something is seriously wrong with the number of guardians. Right as the elf takes down her 70th clone, the team starts to catch on to the problem. No matter how many they defeat, the number of clones surrounding them isn't going down at all. Belmont finally points out their fatal mistake. Taking out a clone just makes another one pop up. They have to find the original. The cat girl starts to panic, realizing they'll run out of magic long before they can find the real guardian. But the Demon King has a plan. He activates his legendary all-knowing eye, and its vision slices right through the illusion, instantly pinpointing the real guardian among all the fakes. He realizes he's too low on power to do anything himself, but a new, devious plan starts to click into place. A wicked idea hits him when he realizes the chamber is packed with untapped energy. He turns to his teammates, announcing that he knows how to win, but he's going to need to borrow something from them. The pink-haired girl scoffs, doubting his pathetic magic reserves could possibly be enough to do anything. With a smirk, Belmont reveals his secret weapon, their magic power. The girls react instantly, wondering if the little incubus is about to use that infamous absorption technique of his. His admirer immediately protests, worried about what will happen to them if he drains all their power. The elf just scoffs at humanity's selfishness, feeling sorry for the sacrifice her ancestor made. Her rival wonders aloud if the two sacrifice heroes transferred their power to someone named Arya. The pink-haired girl furiously denies it has anything to do with humans, but Elf presses on, asking if Arya was the one who actually faced the Demon King. The cat girl cuts in, telling the elf that now is not the time for a history lesson. Unfazed, the elf asks what choice humanity will make now that the demon race is coming back. Belle's words clearly hit their mark, forcing the pink-haired girl to make a choice. With a determined clench of her fist, she decides to bet everything on Belle's plan and boldly offers up all of her magic, telling him to take it all, no holding back. The Demon King's eyes narrow. He knows this will seriously level up her magical potential. The cat girl is completely overwhelmed as the Demon King's absorption technique kicks into high gear. His pink-haired fan is also left gasping from the sheer surge of power, and even the elf is floored by his insane level of control, realizing he's draining way more than she offered. Now fully juiced up, Belmont's eye glows as he remembers every single one of the puppet's simulated weaknesses. A flashback zaps him back to the grand, torchlit halls of his ancient throne room where his personal maid, Lehi, reports that her tasks are done and she's waiting for his next command. The Demon King, in all his original glory, praises his incredibly dependable and loyal servant. A devoted Lehi bows low, swearing her undying loyalty until her very last breath. Belmont remembers her as his #1 fan, the one who would literally sleep outside his door. He remembers how she'd swear her loyalty to his portrait, a true sign of her dedication. Heck, he even recalls her pledging allegiance to statues of him. In fact, she would probably swear undying loyalty to his shadow if it came down to it. This, of course, led to some seriously awkward moments when he was actually standing right there. Another memory pops up of her losing it over someone disrespecting his sculpture with their laundry, but a closer inspection reveals a very familiar and very personal cat pattern on the offending items. The memory fades out with a mortified Lehi pretending she saw absolutely nothing. Back in the present, Belmont pinpoints her fatal flaw. She'll bow down to anything that even remotely resembles him. With a sudden flash of insight, he realizes he just needs to strike while she's distracted by her own fanaticism. Now, at full power, he unleashes a massive projection of his true, terrifying form. The Lehi puppet is left totally frozen, her programming practically short-circuiting at the sight of her one true master. With his power maxed out, the Demon King declares it's time to finish this. But the Lehi puppet is utterly unimpressed, asking if that flashy light show is all he's got. Belmont is completely thrown, wondering if his legendary shadow has lost its handsome appeal. Completely ignoring his projection, the puppet unleashes a devastating whip attack of her own. He barely manages to block the hit, his magical barrier cracking under the immense force. The puppet just scoffs at his confusion, declaring that she doesn't have to play by the rules as her form begins to dissolve, revealing a smug new opponent who announces she's here to punish a pervert. The catgirl panics, recognizing their true foe is none other than the infamous Professor Aphrodite. Furious at the insults, Aphrodite threatens to wipe them all out right then and there, but Belmont just smirks calmly, reminding the professor that he knows her weak spot, too. A flustered Aphrodite demands to know just what the Demon King is planning to do to her. Belmont simply powers up, getting ready to unleash that same special technique he used on her last time. She's caught completely off guard as his power ensnares her once again, leaving her totally immobilized. His teammates can only watch in shock, their reactions a mix of total outrage and intense curiosity. With a determined look, the Demon King declares that this little game is finally over, but Aphrodite's pleas for him to stop only seem to confirm that his victory is certain as his power begins to work its magic, loosening the straps on her uniform. A beet-red but composed Aphrodite tells him to stop playing such childish games. This sudden switch in her attitude leaves the Demon King completely dumbfounded. She smugly reveals that his little trick won't work a second time. Having already sealed the weakness he exploited, the Demon King is floored, realizing he totally misjudged her reaction. A furious Aphrodite unleashes her whip, ready to dish out some serious punishment. Her attack sends a massive shockwave that launches Belmont clear across the chamber. His pink-haired fangirl screams at him for his idiotic move, but the elf knows he needs more power for his technique to land, and the whole team's survival is hanging by a thread. Pinned against the wall, the Demon King is totally at her mercy. Even though he's injured, his glowing eye reveals he's already cooking up a new plan. Aphrodite smirks, taunting him about his supposed failure. He fires up his mystic eye, determined to find the hidden chink in her armor. Unfazed, the professor strikes again, promising to make him regret he was ever born. Her whip erupts in a colossal explosion of pink energy, engulfing the entire room. As the dust begins to settle, Aphrodite stands tall in the lingering smoke. She smirks, confident she has finally taught the little troublemaker a lesson in discipline. But from the smoke emerges a battered Belmont, who managed to block the attack, but not without a cost. The professor's smug expression shatters into pure, unfiltered shock. The sight is so overwhelming that it sends the teacher flying backward in a completely flustered mess. His teammates figure out that the Iron Virgin has probably never seen a man's situation before. Overwhelmed by the shock, Aphrodite's bottled-up emotions start to run wild. The Demon King's mystic eye pinpoints the true weakness in her defense, her own repressed desires. With her weak spot exposed, he calls upon his demonic spirit, Cain, to exploit the opening. Cain's power erupts, binding the professor in her own berserker energy. The demonic spirit rises, impressed by the raw power it's now got on a leash. Aphrodite fights back, desperately trying to get a handle on her rampaging emotions. In a last-ditch effort, she unleashes a powerful blast of her own magic. The energy forms into a magical seal, a final attempt to contain her berserker rage. She summons a cage of pure energy, choosing to imprison herself rather than totally lose it. Cain is stunned, realizing she'd rather seal herself away than give in to who she really is. The professor screams as her own power turns on her, trapping her in a prison of light. The demonic spirit understands this self-destructive path will only lead to her end. Cain decides to offer another way. Planning to use the absorbed magic to help her out, Cain pulls out a mysterious golden object, its eye glowing with purpose. The spirit materializes a legendary weapon, the demon's sword. With a single, mighty slash, it sends a wave of pure energy flying. Cain declares its intention to free the professor from her self-made prison. The golden power smashes into the cage with a huge boom, shattering the berserker's seal. Elsewhere, a dark presence senses the spike of demonic power. A shadowy figure vows it cannot allow the demon race to get away. Its chilling promise echoes through the halls. No demon will leave Demacy alive. Back in the chamber, the team cautiously wonders if their fight is finally over. On the floor, completely spent, Aphrodite feels a weird sense of calm, finally at ease after letting all her power loose. Belmont casually mentions he's already gotten back a fifth of his real strength. A humbled Aphrodite can't figure out why he'd help her after she treated him so horribly. He just shrugs it off, explaining it was simply a lesson on how to accept your true self. The red-faced professor admits she was totally out of line for judging him. Just then, a magical announcement proclaims their win, and the whole team goes wild. Never missing a beat, the cat girl immediately demands her own special meridian massage from the little incubus. Meanwhile, the elf spots that his horns have gotten bigger, confirming her secret little plan to boost his power is actually working. His cat-eared fangirl quickly throws some clothes back on him, while the pink-haired girl calls them out for being so awkward. Still, she can't help but admit he's gotten even more handsome. Now fully dressed, the Demon King lets out a smirk, feeling more like his old self than he has in a long time. Belmont suits up in a new set of armor that feels like it was forged just for him. But their victory party is cut short when a massive explosion blows a hole right through the wall. The pink-haired girl immediately demands to know what's going on, but even the professor in charge is completely in the dark. Professor Clean confirms it. This sudden ambush is definitely not part of the test. The Demon King's instincts go on high alert, and he warns his team that something is coming out of the smoke. A split second later, a ferocious werewolf warrior emerges, vowing to avenge the fallen heroes of Demacy. The cat girl's eyes go wide. She recognizes him as Clem, a legendary holy hero from her homeland. His fangirl is totally confused, remembering that Clem was supposed to have been killed in action. At the same time, the elf senses that something is seriously off, noting the resurrected hero's power feels unnaturally immense. All their questions point to one place, the ominous Hall of Battle Spirits, which just so happens to be the next stage of their trial. Turns out, two shadowy figures are behind this, admitting they summoned the hero's spirit using dark magic. Their plan is simple. Use the resurrected hero to take out the Demon King and make the whole thing look like a tragic accident. One of the schemers starts worrying about collateral damage, pointing out that 3 hero descendants are also in the room. But his partner coldly brushes it off, saying that sacrificing their own is a worthy honor for the fallen. Back in the thick of it, the elf is trading blows with the resurrected hero, and the force of their fight is shaking the entire chamber to its core. She lets loose a rapid-fire flurry of strikes, but the werewolf's overwhelming power just swats them away like they're nothing. The other girls can only watch in horror as the chamber starts to crumble around them, their own magic still too depleted to be of any use. That's when Belmont steps forward, ordering his team to get out of there while he keeps the rampaging hero busy. But his pink-haired fangirl absolutely refuses to leave him behind, insisting that they're all getting out of this together. He calmly tells her that with their power levels so low, he's their only shot at making it out alive. This time, a humbled Aphrodite agrees, realizing they'd just be in the way. She takes charge and starts leading the other girls to safety. But the resurrected hero lets out a furious roar, vowing that no demon will ever leave Demacy alive. With that, Belmont charges and tackles the beast, deciding it's time to take this fight somewhere a little more private. After one last worried look back, the girls make a break for it through the collapsing ruins. Their fight continues to rage, with the sheer force of their attacks causing the entire cavern to fall apart around them. The werewolf unleashes its full might, bringing a colossal axe crashing down on the Demon King. Belmont manages to block the strike, but the resulting shockwave absolutely obliterates the battlefield. He grimaces, realizing that even with 20% of his power back, it's still not going to be enough to take this guy down. The furious spirit vows to shatter the demon into a million tiny pieces. But Belmont's mystic eye spots another problem. As a spirit, the hero has no traceable magic flow. The resurrected hero roars, fighting for the glory of his people. He swings his axe, going in for the final blow, but his devastating attack is suddenly blocked by a familiar, glowing whip. The werewolf is stunned, demanding to know who would dare interfere with his sacred mission. Just then, Professor Clean makes her entrance. She's using her own strength to hold back the beast's immense power, leaving Belmont completely baffled by her sudden and very timely arrival. Clean declares that she won't stand by and let a student die, even if she's running low on magic herself. Her determination triggers a flashback to a peaceful day under a tree, where young Klein is overjoyed by a handmade gift from her childhood friend. The boy nervously works up the courage to ask for a kiss, but a flustered Clean chides him for being so blunt. The awkwardness leaves them both embarrassed, but the boy puckers up anyway, ready to steal a first kiss from the blushing Clean. But their moment is shattered by a massive bolt of energy, a violent end to her innocent childhood crush. The source of the interruption is revealed. Her stern and imposing father has arrived, and he immediately drags her away. She desperately promises her friend Evans that she'll still make it to his party, as a tearful Clean screams that she'll be waiting for him. She's clinging to the last shred of hope as Evans promises to be there, his face already a blur in her fading memory. Her father then burns the teddy bear, a cruel, symbolic end to her childhood innocence. He then imprisons his own daughter in a cage of energy, determined to mold her into a weapon as he lectures her on her duty as a berserker. It's a title that demands absolute sacrifice, and he commands her to become cold and heartless. He forbids her from ever getting close to a boy again. A young Klein screams in agony, trapped by her father's cruel training. Back in the present, the resurrected hero blasts her away for daring to defend a demon, and she crashes hard into the ground. This leaves Belmont to face the enraged spirit alone. Clem questions her honor, vowing to sacrifice her in the name of DC's fallen heroes. The werewolf unleashes his ultimate technique, the legendary Axe of Chaos. Clem panics, knowing that attack will turn everything in its path to dust. But Belmont's glowing eye shows he has one last, desperate plan. He unleashes that familiar power once again, apologizing to the professor for what he's forced to do. His energy tendrils bind her, just like they did during their last encounter, as the Demon King commands his spirit to find the deepest wish hidden in her heart. His power dives deep into her memories, revealing a lonely birthday party from long ago. A voice calls out, and a young Clean remembers her childhood friend, Evans, as the boy appears within her memory. He wishes the young girl a happy birthday, and as shy Clean can only blush and thank him, her heart filled with joy. But the memory sours, revealing that Evans never made it to her celebration. Instead, her father appears. He's there to end another session of her brutal training, and he coldly informs her that Evans passed away the week before, completely crushing her hopes. This devastating news leaves the young girl completely and utterly broken. Her father commands her to forget her emotions and only remember her duty as a berserker as the door slams shut behind him. It locked away her heart, condemning her to a world of rigid discipline. The memory ends with a young Klein's agonizing scream, her childhood utterly shattered. Back inside her mind, the demonic spirit Cain found himself in a vast, empty void until a strange sound pierced the silence. The noise put the powerful spirit on high alert. Cain located the source, a single teddy bear, a forgotten memento from Klein's past. But this was no ordinary toy, as one of its eyes suddenly crackled to life, casting a menacing pink glow. The forgotten gift swelled into a monstrous guardian, fueled by her repressed emotions. Completely unfazed, Cain summoned the legendary demon sword to face this new threat. The golden blade sang as it sliced through the air, poised to sever the professor's inner turmoil at its source. Cain's attack landed true, engulfing the giant bear in a brilliant explosion, but the blast revealed its true purpose. It was meant to protect the crying child trapped within. Cain finally saw the source of her pain, a younger Klein drowning in her own sorrow. A mysterious hand reached out, offering a small comfort in her lonely world. She looked up, a faint glimmer of hope in her eyes, wondering if it could be her long-lost friend, Evans. At that thought, a memory of Evans materialized before her, finally here to keep the promise he had made all those years ago. Back in the real world, the Demon King pulled the professor into an embrace, sensing her deepest wish. He vowed to fulfill that wish in Evans's place, to finally grant her the peace she'd been denied. With tears streaming down her face, a grateful Klein finally accepted the kindness she was so long denied as he granted her childhood wish. A simple kiss shattered years of repressed pain. The resurrected hero was suddenly blasted backward, stunned by an overwhelming surge of power. With his power now fully restored, the Demon King finally revealed his true form. Ready to end this once and for all, Belmont coldly told the resurrected hero that he should have stayed dead. In response, the enraged werewolf charged forward, vowing to crush the reckless little kid. Amused by the insult, Belmont summoned a legendary golden sword to show him just how wrong he was. Their blades met in an epic clash that sent the hero's massive axe flying through the air. The disarmed werewolf could only roar in absolute, furious disbelief. With an air of calm finality, the Demon King declared that this battle was officially over. Meanwhile, Professor Clean panicked as the battlefield crumbled into sand around her. The hero just laughed maniacally, boasting that the Axe of Chaos's power was irreversible. But Belmont simply bent down and picked up the legendary weapon, ready to make a point. He effortlessly absorbed its chaotic power, declaring that there wasn't a single type of magic in the world he couldn't control. The resurrected hero was left completely stunned, unable to comprehend Belmont's absolute mastery over magic, as a massive magical construct descended from the sky. It was a creation summoned by the Demon King's own power. With a solemn expression, Belmont offered the fallen hero one final moment of grace. He then unleashed his attack, a grim reminder of the same fate the hero had met 50 years prior. The cat girl shrugged off the spirit's defeat, but her rival insisted it was a sacred moment for her people. The elf calmly pointed out that the spirit was nothing more than a puppet, even expressing her pity for the beast race. Those words immediately sparked a fight, with the cat girl ready to throw down with the arrogant elf. Professor Clean quickly stepped in, explaining that these battle spirits are capable of retaining fragments of a hero's memories. She revealed that the spirits are driven by lingering obsessions, forcing them to continue fighting to fulfill their final wishes. And with that, Belmont finally understood. The resurrected hero was simply acting on his master's final, desperate command. Professor Clean immediately spots a huge red flag in the situation. A top-tier spirit like Clem has no business just roaming around. His pink-haired fan instantly smells a rat, wondering if this is a hit job aimed at Belle. Catgirl's mind jumps to a usual suspect, questioning if her brother Brian is the one behind this. Meanwhile, the elf resolves to protect Belmont, realizing she has to be his personal bodyguard for the entire festival. Taking command, Professor Klein steps up. She orders the team to push forward while she reports the incident to the academy, but just as he turns to go, the professor suddenly yells his name, stopping him dead in his tracks. Belmont just smirks, offering the professor some unasked for advice on dealing with her pent-up feelings. The totally flustered professor freaks out, completely blindsided by his incredibly bold and personal offer. She yanks him in close, whispering a deadly threat if he ever dares to spill the secret about their power-sharing deal. Elsewhere, the shadowy plotters are completely stunned, unable to process how their ultimate weapon was taken down so easily. The conspirators pull themselves together, insisting they still have a shot at taking out their target. Their plan B all depends on the festival's second event, the Immortal Elite Spirits. In the meantime, an instructor congratulates the 6 teams that managed to survive the first trial. She motions toward a massive gate, announcing that the next challenge is the Palace of the Elite Spirits. The catgirl's brother, Brian, calculates that he'll need 2 hero badges to move on. Suddenly, a familiar voice cries out, desperately yelling for a big brother. Brian spins around, completely confused, not recognizing the person shouting his name. The voice belongs to a totally transformed Ricket, who brags that he gave up his old body to follow in Brian's footsteps. But his big dramatic reunion gets cut short when a giant hand grabs him by the collar. The wrestling club leader drags him off, leaving Brian to just awkwardly acknowledge his fanboy's extreme makeover. The instructor then drops a major bombshell. The next trial is a total free-for-all, with every student for themselves. Belmont sees this as the perfect chance to test out his special cultivation methods on his new female companions. But his lovely entourage has other ideas, immediately grabbing him before he can even think about sneaking off alone. The catgirl playfully puts the little incubus in a headlock while her rival insists on watching their every move. She then catches the elf trailing them, and angrily demands to know why she's still following them. The elf coolly plays it off, claiming she's just passing by, an excuse that nobody in the group buys for a single second. Their bickering is cut short as they enter the spectacular palace of the elite spirits, lined with statues of heroes. A mysterious voice suddenly booms throughout the hall, demanding that the students show a little respect. The warning comes from a golden statue, which promises there will be hell to pay for any misbehavior. The pink-haired girl quickly realizes these statues aren't just for show. They actually house the real battle spirits of the heroes. The elf reveals that a golden statue depicts Grass, a legendary hero and a martyr to her people. Belmont recognizes that name, and it finally clicks why his elven teammate seems so familiar. A flashback shows his incredibly awkward first meeting with the original Grass, where he asked a really bizarre question. The legendary hero chose to literally go out with a bang rather than answer his weird inquiry. Even centuries later, The Demon King is still seriously scratching his head over the whole person or horse thing when the golden statue of grass suddenly whips its head around, locking its gaze right on him. That's when his pink-haired fanboy smacks him upside the head to snap him out of it, yelling that his cluelessness is going to get them all kicked out. But their little squabble is cut short by a totally jacked Ricket who's just shown up looking for his big bro. Suddenly, a glowing arrow comes zipping through the hall, aimed right at Belmont's crew. The love-struck admirer dives in front of the attack, taking a massive hit that was meant for the Demon King. The arrow makes contact, erupting in a huge explosion that completely swallows the fanboy. A crushed Ricket cries out about how weak he is, while Brian just coldly shrugs off his attempt. Just then, a system announcement booms throughout the hall. Ricket has been officially eliminated. The golden statue of grass then introduces herself as the referee for this particular trial. She announces that everyone has to pass 3 tests of character: loyalty, bravery, and wisdom. Grass then declares that the first trial, the test of loyalty, will be run by the spirit of Marini. With a heavy thud, another golden statue steps down from its pedestal to kick things off. The cat girl just stares in disbelief as the legendary hero's spirit comes to life. His pink-haired fanboy points out that the spirit is Minnie, the most loyal warrior in human history. The Golden Knight Minnie then commands silence, his powerful presence filling the entire hall. The spirit then lays down the law. You will tell the truth about why you want to be a hero, or you will face a severe punishment. Some overeager student immediately shoots his hand up, volunteering to be the first one judged. He passionately announces that his lifelong dream is to become the greatest man in the country. The student then throws himself on the ground, begging the legendary spirit to let him pass. But the golden hero is not having any of it, and immediately calls him out on his blatant lie. The volunteer starts stammering, denying everything with a look of pure panic on his face. Marini exposes the kid's real desire. He only got this far because he wants to become a happy, chubby guy. His classmates completely lose it, bursting into laughter, mercilessly making fun of his less-than-heroic goal. For his dishonesty, the spirit strikes him down, declaring that disloyalty will not be tolerated. Meanwhile, the scene cuts over to the dean's office, hinting that a whole different kind of trouble is brewing. Professor Klen is reporting her suspicions to the dean, totally convinced that someone is targeting Belmont. The dean coldly brushes off her concerns, telling the professor she can go. Cleen starts to panic, arguing that if the festival keeps going, a student could get seriously hurt, but the dean just shuts her down with a single, firm command. She smirks, revealing that she's way more interested in testing the Demon King's power than in keeping everyone safe. Back in the hall, the dishonest student is lying defeated on the floor, serving as a grim warning to everyone else. The rest of the contestants are horrified, wondering if the festival just turned into a death match. Even Belmont's teammates are completely stunned, unable to believe the academy would actually let a student get taken out for real. But the Demon King activates his mystic eye, refusing to just accept what he's seeing. His vision reveals the truth. The student's magic flow is stable, which means this whole thing is just an illusion. Belmont notices that the blood is actually floating in the air, completely defying the laws of physics. A closer look shows that the liquid isn't blood at all, but some suspicious-looking pale yellow stuff. The Demon King reaches out, finally realizing this entire scene is just a magical trick. He snatches the student's arm, and wouldn't you know it, the supposedly dead kid starts to stir. Belmont's eyes narrow as the terrified student finally snaps out of the illusion. The boy tearfully confesses the magic felt so unbelievably real, he actually wet his pants out of sheer terror. His teammates get it, though. It was all a hyper-realistic illusion made to test their courage. The golden referee disqualifies the humiliated student and summons the next challenger. Completely unfazed by the spectacle, a confident catgirl steps up to take her test. Minnie poses a very personal question, asking if she would sacrifice herself to complete a mission. The other students are floored by her response, gossiping about her supposedly inferior race. She furiously tells the annoying guys to shut their traps, stunning them with her fiery attitude. Then, with a sly smirk, she admits that if a certain incubus were involved, her answer would be a whole lot different. Her rival completely loses it in a jealous rage, demanding she stop acting like such a flirt. To everyone's shock, the Golden Spirit declares that her honest, if a bit cheeky, answer is good enough to pass. Minnie directs the successful candidates over to a waiting area, clearing the stage for the next challenger. A stoic elf glides forward, her calm vibe a complete 180 from the last contestant. The spirit hits her with a tough one. What would she do if a friend betrayed her entire race? Her response is quick and absolutely brutal. She'd kill them without a second thought, since she has no use for friends. Despite her cold-blooded answer, the spirit considers her loyal enough to pass, leaving her rival totally stunned. The pink-haired girl then steps forward, determined to prove her own loyalty. But the spirit slams her with a savage question. Would she sacrifice someone she likes for the mission? She's completely blindsided by the cruel ultimatum, her confidence starting to waver. Belmont grimly notes that these so-called heroes seem more ruthless than any demon he's ever met. With a heavy heart, she glances back at the one person on her mind. The Demon King watches, realizing he's the subject of her impossible choice. She makes her decision, declaring she could never, ever harm the person she likes. The other students immediately write her off, certain she just flunked the test. A smug onlooker scoffs at her hesitation, writing her off as just another Rosie. The Golden Spirit lays into her, questioning how she can call herself a hero if she can't make the hard choice. But to everyone's absolute astonishment, the Golden Spirit accepts her answer, declaring that she passes. The pink-haired girl is baffled, asking how her very unheroic answer could possibly be correct. Minnie explains that a true hero's job is to protect the ones they love, even quoting a legendary figure to prove the point. With her test finished, the Golden Spirit calls for the next challenger to step up. He poses a new question to a buff-looking student: a strong body or a steadfast soul? The brawny contestant scoffs, clearly unimpressed by the either-or choice. He rips his shirt open and boldly declares he'll take both, which flusters the spirit so much it just passes him. The test just descends into chaos as the spirit starts passing and failing students on a whim. The pink-haired girl gets antsy, wondering why Belmont hasn't taken his turn yet. She insists she's not worried, but the cat girl sees right through her flimsy act. Belmont, meanwhile, realizes he's in a tight spot. How can a Demon King honestly say he wants to be a hero? He knows he has to find a clever way to pass this test without telling a straight-up lie. Just then, a faint magical shimmer catches his eye. He notices another student casting an invisibility spell right next to the golden statues. The spirit then challenges her to write out a declaration of war using the demon language. Belmont carefully analyzes the complex patterns of her invisibility spell and recognizes her as the quiet girl who's always trailing after Brian. She confidently spouts her answer in what she thinks is the demon tongue, but it makes the Demon King absolutely cringe, realizing her so-called demon language is just complete nonsense. To his total shock, the Golden Spirit actually declares her answer correct and lets her pass. Belmont is completely baffled, wondering how on earth she passed when her answer was totally wrong. Just then, the quiet girl dispels her magic, confirming she was definitely using some kind of spell. Suddenly, it all clicks for the Demon King as he finally figures out the real secret behind the test. Armed with a new strategy, Belmont confidently steps up to face the Golden Spirit. The spirit poses its question, asking the Demon King to name the greatest hero in history. His teammates are positive the answer is Arya, thinking the question is almost a giveaway. The pink-haired girl chimes in, agreeing, stating that literally everyone knows her grandmother, Arya, is the greatest. The Golden Spirit just stares intently, demanding that Belmont give his honest answer. With a cocky smirk, the Demon King gets ready to drop a completely unexpected response. He boldly declares that the greatest hero is, of course, the Demon King himself, Belmont. The other students immediately erupt in outrage, demanding that the crazy demon be kicked out for his blasphemous claim. His pink-haired admirer is absolutely livid, yelling at him for saying something so disrespectful. But the cat girl just smirks, intrigued by the little incubus's intentionally provocative answer. The elf calmly sizes up the situation, wondering if Belmont has already figured out the secret to passing this test. The Golden Spirit raises a scroll, getting ready to deliver its final judgment on Belmont's supposed loyalty. But in his head, Belmont reveals he's already cracked the code to this whole test. He thinks back to the quiet girl passing, realizing her magic was the real key, not her answer. The Demon King remembers seeing her invisibility spell focused right on the statue's head. He figures out the magic isn't for fighting, but to hide the user's own power fluctuations. And just like that, Belmont connects the dots. Since a person's magic wavers when they lie, she just blocked the statue from sensing her at all. He realizes the whole test is a complete sham. It's not about telling the truth, it's about using magic to hide your emotions. With the code totally cracked,